Alright, hello and welcome back to the Ace Attorney Chronicles. Tonight we're going to be reopening a cold case, as we have just received a letter from Suzato that apparently this strange case that Mr. Sholmes asked us to not involve ourselves in was what caused her father to immediately write to her that he was deathly ill and needed her immediately, even though she arrived and found him in perfect health. It was 6 months ago. Alright, we're gonna start. Oh, yeah, we started recap with Ryanosuke going over the case files after Suzato told him where he could find them. Alright, so it was 6 months ago. A mysterious incident that unfolded on the wintry streets of London. A young woman was found lying on the snowy pavement of Briar Road with a knife in her back. Fortunately, her life was spared, but she was unconscious for several days following the incident. The fog was thick and nobody saw her attack her, but by a cruel twist of fate, a visiting Japanese student was walking behind her at the time and was duly arrested. The man was Soseki-san, and the man who effected his arrest was Mr. Sholmes. Believing in our compatriot's innocence, Suzato and I decided to represent Soseki in court. And after a grueling trial of many twists and turns, we finally managed to prove his innocence. Joyful, joyous, jubilant jubilation was the man's reaction after the trial, but his jubilant jubilation was very short-lived. We received a telegram from Mr. Sholmes the following morning. The victim of the Briar Road stabbing has regained consciousness. Hurry to Bart's at once. Now this is what was skipped, I believe. So Suzato and I summoned a hansom and headed immediately over to the hospital. On 1st of February. So we're going back in time for this. St. Bartholomew's Hospital Recovery Ward. A rat. Ah, that's adorable. But probably not good to have. There you are at last. Good morning, Mr. Sholmes. I think not. Oh! You're a little late. What on earth took you so long? Interesting, what's got him mad? Your telegram only arrived at 5 o'clock, Mr. Sholmes. It's a 20-minute ride to the hospital. That's right, it's half past 5 now. I think we made very good time. Time's utterly irrelevant. Fact is, I've been waiting for what felt like an eternity. Aha! As a point of fact, I myself was awoken at 4 this morning by a telegram boy. A feeling that was somewhat unjust that I alone had been roused such an hour. I sent one to you. Well, thanks for that. Anyway, you're here now, so the victim's over there. She only just regained consciousness. Ah, there she is. You should introduce yourselves, and I shall observe from here. So that's the lady who was found on the snow-covered pavement with a knife in her back. Her name is... Ah, yes, here we are. Miss Green. This rounded wooden figure isn't the most charming, is it? Ah, I don't think that's a decoration, Mr. Naruhodo. It's an artist's mannequin, I believe, used in practicing sketching the human form in different poses. Really? It's not exactly what you call a typical figure for that purpose, though, is it? No, I suppose not. I confess I've never seen one quite so full-figured before. Well, if you want to draw a full-figured person, it's the right tool for the job. Yeah, I know a handful of artists, and they have confirmed that someone full-figured like that is actually a lot more work than regular, so I would understand why you'd need a dedicated model for something like that. Oh look, there's a photograph in this frame here. Is that her husband? Oh, it's a picture of a young gentleman. He looks to be about the same age as Miss Green. Oh, it could also be her brother. Perhaps the young woman's special someone, do you think? We'll have to ask her. My, Mr. Naruhodo, I didn't know you had a sense for matters of the heart. Not in the least. I sincerely said the first thing I thought of. Well, to be fair, I clearly thought the same thing. Adorable. Eek, a mouse, Mr. Naruhodo. An enormous mouse. Vermin in a hospital? That doesn't seem the best. It looks like a very healthy specimen, doesn't it? It's very... I'm not sure we can say that's down to the excellence of this facility, if that's what you were thinking. It's adorable, though, I will give it that. They made sure to give it a cute art style. That must be the bag of Miss Green's personal belongings. She should have been brought here directly after she was found stabbed on the pavement, though. I expect a friend or family member probably brought some things for her. Alright, let's see what's inside. Change of clothes, no doubt. No, Mr. Naruhodo, you must never scrutinize a young maiden's personal belongings. Well, the young maiden might have chocolates, or biscuits, or caramel. This looks like the patient's treatment notes. Let's see. Do not feed. What is this place, a zoo? You know, I seem to recall seeing an almost identical sign at a local park. For the pigeons, yes, this is a person. Poor woman, I hope she hasn't read this. Good morning. Hello, I'm Ryanosuke Naruhodo from the Empire of Japan. Oh, no, was it your knife that... Are you the man who... Oh, no, I'm a lawyer. And I'm Suzato Mikotaba, pleased to meet you. Oh, no, was it your knife then? Real one? Oh, no, I assure you, I'm Mr. Judicial Assistant. We heard you'd regain consciousness and we wanted to come give you our best wishes. For me? Thank you. I'm Olive Green. I'm an artist. Well, no, that's not right, is it? What I mean is I'm trying to be an artist. What I really mean is I desperately want to be an artist. The truth is, I don't have any talent. I just know I don't. No wonder I was in the back. I don't think that's related, actually. Yeah, remember, if you recall from the last game, that was a completely accidental thing. I mean, obviously, criminal neglect is... Causing injury to someone like that is still a crime, but it's not nearly as bad as what our client was going to be in trouble for, that's for sure. Gosh, this young woman seems to bend over backwards to put herself down. Seeing as you're here, we should ask her about what happened from her perspective, I suppose. We're gonna have to start about the incident here. To suddenly be struck in the back as a blade as you were walking along the pavement. What terrible experience you had. It was so cold that day. The fog was so thick, I couldn't see a thing. That was 4 days ago now, I think. Is that right? Yes, that's right. I'm afraid you've been comatose all that time. But the case has been solved, hasn't it? While I've been here in the hospital, I mean. Indeed it has, my dear ma'am. Spectacularly, but none other than I, Herlock Sholmes. Mr. Sholmes, as you well know, it was Mr. Naruhodo's hard work in the court that solved the case. Are you yet to hear what happened, Miss Green? Yes, I'm afraid so. A gentleman from the police force is supposed to be coming to fill me in shortly. Oh, I see. Me coming round seems to have made everyone frantically busy. I'm so sorry, I should never have regained consciousness. It was selfish of me. Oh no, we're all so relieved that you're okay. That you're on the mend, Miss Green. You really are. With that kind of attitude, maybe our surname should be Blue, not Green. About yourself. So you're an artist, Miss Green? Oh no, I couldn't possibly claim that. I'm a fledgling artist at best. I mean, I'm a student of art, really. At the Thorndike Academy of Fine Arts. Oh my, an Academy of Fine Arts. Yeah, like I said, I've run into a lot of artists over the years, and a lot of them are pretty harsh against themselves. Yeah, you could tell them good job, and they'll say, oh no, there's so many problems with this, stuff I didn't even notice. I guess it's like that one meme where one character makes a beautiful cake, one person puts a less impressive cake next to it, It's just all, oh man, my cake sucks, no one's gonna like it, and then someone else comes in and is all, holy crap, 2 cakes! Academy of Fine Arts, great. Britain is such a wonderful country. Tell me, Miss Green, do you live hereabouts? Oh, no, actually. I don't deserve it, but I have a little flat on Brixton Road. I see. How very interesting. Oh no, is it? Brixton is some 10 stops away from the underground from here. And the Thorndike Academy is a mere 3 walk from Brixton Town Centre. Does that matter, Mr. Sholmes? Perhaps not, but Briar Road is far less a tourist part of town by comparison, built by those of inferior... Okay, so, Briar Road... Okay, so she lives in a nicer part of town, I guess would be the way it would be put. That's basically what he's trying to say. This is from... She's basically... He's not sure why she was in the part of town where people with less income typically live. Including the maleficent Mr. Mustache. Inferior means, I suppose Soseki-san does fit the bill. Yeah, unfortunately doesn't have as much money. It struck me as somewhat out of the ordinary for a young fine arts student to be walking in such a district, that's all. What's this? She suddenly clammed up. Mr. Sholmes, you should be ashamed of yourself, prying into a young maiden's private affairs. Oh dear, do forgive me. If you don't mind, I'm being discharged shortly, so I need to pack up my things. Oh yes, of course, we won't keep you. Thank you so much, Miss Green. Is there a narrow fodder here? A narrow fodder here? Narrow fodder now? Oh yeah, because no one's... If you're looking for a Naruhodo, the lawyer, that's me, but... Ah, good. This is for you. It's a message from Mr. Saucy Nutmeg. Natsume sent a message to me, eh? But why would a policeman be delivering a message from Mr. Natsume? Exactly, what's going on here? What's a Scotland Yard constable doing playing delivery boy at this time of the morning? Ah, what are you waiting for? Let me see that. Oh. Well, this is most unexpected. Is something wrong, Mr. Sholmes? Something wrong, Mr. Sholmes, he says. Have you not seen this note? No, how could I have? It would seem that London's criminals have no intention of letting the great detective rest. A new case calls, a case of murder, no less. We must depart at once. Murder? Oh, okay. The time is of the essence. Oh, but the trouble is, we've yet to read Mr. Natsume's note. I was thinking we ought to pay him a visit in his lodging once we did. That would be entirely convenient. Convenient? What do you mean? It's all in here on the note, my good dear fellows. The murder we must investigate took place at Mr. Mustache's lodgings. Wait, what? I'll hail a cab at once. It was only yesterday that Mr. Soseki-san was in court and we were dispelling doubts of his innocence. And now the very next day, there's a murder at the man's own address? He may very well be the unluckiest man alive. Or so it seemed us at the time, but we were soon to discover it was worse than we thought. Ground floor. Oh my. What on earth? That's the Shakespearean actor we interacted with on the day of that day. I thought maybe he'd show up later in the next case as a witness or a juror, but no. Oh my, the gentleman's deceased without question. He's dead. Locum's doing Mr. Naruto Esquire, Mr. Natsume. Oh, why? Why is this happening? Why to me? Well, I just got out of court yesterday. I was finally home free after 2 days of misery. Then I wake up the next day to this. No early bird should catch a worm like this. Woeful worm without wiggle. I see you're in high spirits again this morning, Mr. Mustache. Ah, not the horrible Herlock Sholmes. Shoo, shove off. Turn yourself the door. I never invited you. Mr. Sholmes came here with us. quite sure he'll be able to help you, Mr. Natsume. I'm entirely at your disposal, Mr. Mustache. What can I do for you? Oh sheesh, here they are, already. The busybodies. Ah, Inspector Gregson, what a pleasant surprise! Pleasant, is it? Gives me heartburn every time I see your face at a crime scene, Sholmes. Ah, I deduce, Inspector, that your heartburn is a result of your excessive consumption of fried food. Good morning, Inspector. Hey, this is a crime scene. Don't you go touching anything. Or good morning to you too, Sunshine. Boy, I said hands off. You're gonna mess up my crime scene. No, I just want to look, that's all. Not a chance. I know. God, you'll mess it up just by looking at it. How? Someone's in a bad mood. There's certainly some bad air in there, isn't there? Alright, sounds like I better talk to the inspector first and try to curry some favor. What a terrible thing to have happened. It's only been 3 days since I was arrested for the incident on the pavement outside. And then, having finally regained my freedom, it starts happening all over again. Endless existence of excruciating experiences. So the victim lived here on the ground floor, and your room's just one story up, isn't it? Yes, that's right. In a way, we were neighbors, I suppose you could say. Did you know the victim? Were you friends at all? What's the matter with him now? It was an innocent enough question, wasn't it? Why does he seem so shaken by it? Well, I suppose he wasn't a complete stranger. But he did... Did he ever invite me to his room? No, never. On my honor, I swear it. What an extreme reaction. You're probably wishing you'd never asked now, aren't you, Mr. Naruhodo? When we found him here, I felt wretched, which is why I sent word asking you to come. Through that inspector over there. Alright, so Inspector, what was the victim's name? Who was he? Mr. William Shakespeare. He was a lodger here. As you can probably tell, he was an actor. Bit of a dead loss as it happens, or just dead. Mr. Shakespeare. It was landlord, old Mr. Girdib, and the other lodger, Mr. Natsume, who found him. Phil didn't rise at his usual hour, so Girdib got worried and kicked the door down. But doesn't Mr. Girdib have a bad leg? Yeah, you're right there. It was that Japanese hunchback over there who actually did the kicking. Really? So Seki-san? Well, I suppose those shoes he's wearing would be ideal for breaking down a door. The victim was pretty hard up, it seems. He even done some time inside for petty crimes. Had no money, no place to go, and no friends. His only acquaintances with the people in this very house. Miserable life, miserable end to it. So what exactly is Mr. Natsume still doing here? He's not involved in the investigation, so shouldn't you have sent him away from the crime scene? Well, I'm not saying it's because the fellow looks odd or anything, or that he acts suspicious, but I thought it'd be prudent to take a statement from the cohabiter. You nearly said culprit there now, didn't you, Inspector? Oh dear, Mr. Natsume appears to be under suspicion again. Certainly seems that way. He just come across as an odd fellow, doesn't he? Poor man, how unfortunate. Anyway, I can't say much until the coroner gets here. But I don't think the fellow's been a goner that long. Body's still warm. Even if the inspector would allow it, I don't think I could bring myself to touch a dead body. Oh yeah, everything's got a check mark because they'll all just get me yelled at. And Mr. Sholmes has teleported in, I notice. Mr. Sholmes, what are you doing? You need only observe to know it, my dear fellow. Investigating, naturally. There's nothing natural about that pose. Mr. Sholmes, have you made some miraculous discovery? Patience, my dear madam, patience. We've not been here in this room 5 minutes. So far, all I've managed to deduce is what actually happened. Oh my goodness! But isn't that everything we needed to know, Mr. Sholmes? Hmm. Now that you propose the idea, I believe one could indeed see it that way. At the present time, I've managed to draw two incontrovertible conclusions. The first is that there was a physical struggle here last night, which the victim fought for his life. Ah! Mr. Natsume, what's wrong? Is something that Mr. Sholmes said significant to you somehow? No, don't mind me. Forget I was even here. And my second conclusion is that there was a poison lingering in the air last night that passed the victim's lips. Nonsense! Ah. Alright, Mr. Natsume, why are you reacting so extremely to Mr. Sholmes' deductions? No, please, pretend I'm not here. Invisible, ineffable, inscrutable, insignificant. Impossible to ignore. You must tell us everything, Mr. Sholmes. Spare no detail. But of course. Let the theatrical tragedy before us be unraveled by my great deductions, presented by your pleasure in 2 acts. We've heard some truly astounding great deductions from Mr. Sholmes in the past, and no doubt this will be no exception. What miracles will unfold before our eyes this time? So, my dear fellows, for your delight and wonder, let the curtain rise. For Sherlock Sholmes' logic and reasoning spectacular. Act 1. The Great Deduction. The game's afoot. The cause of death. Careful observation of the victim reveals us the events that transpire in this disconsolate room last night. Foam at the mouth of the deceased clearly indicates use of poison. Next to the victim, we notice a large dining plate in which contains, you'll observe, 1/2 of a sizable bar of soap. Meaningful, indubitably. Why is the soap set purposefully on the dish? Or is the victim like the victim's last supper? Why, yes, in fact, could it be the man was about to eat it? Of course, the fork reveals the answer. The fork? But you can't eat soap. In fact, that's... yeah, like, a really old thing that I know used to happen was that if the children would swear, parents would wash their mouth out with soap. Soap as a punishment, but it turns out that's actually really bad because you're not supposed to ingest soap. That is very bad for your health. And so no one really does it anymore. After all, swearing... hey, well, children swearing is kind of hilarious, but they really probably shouldn't be. At least it's not a good habit to get into. The more you do it, the less effective it is, after all. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, they probably shouldn't be doing that, but that doesn't really matter because the soap is really not... it can be quite dangerous to ingest, so you don't want to be doing that. It appears the young man's appetite was his undoing. Taking up arms in the form of the cutlery, the victim engaged directly in a deadly battle for his life. Yet the struggle against his hunger was in vain, for in the end he couldn't resist devouring the slippery feast, but London's foul soap is besmirched by foul poison. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the contents of the plate. And I'm pretty sure the poison was in the cup. The soap and the lather about the young man's mouth are too perfectly matched to ignore. Okay, I guess I probably shouldn't have gone through that story when Sholmes basically immediately said why it was a bad thing. The cause of death was clearly intoxication due to excessive ingestion of foul soap. Though personally, I have a greater interest in the taste of foul candle wax. Poisoning from soap ingestion. Suicide or med? The cause of death identified, we are to proceed to Act 2, where we ponder the next question. Oh crap. Right, I shouldn't use that word if I want to put this on YouTube. Crap. So was this self-deletion or murder? The audience will recall the death occurred during the victim's last supper. Did the man die alone? A single teacup suggests the answer. Draw a conclusion of such meager evidence would be foolish, certainly. A careful criminal would have to abscond with his own cup to cover his tracks. Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is the broken lock. No, that was what the police made when they broke... No, that was what Soseki made when he broke in here, remember? The forced open now. At the time of the incident, this door was locked. And the sole key was in the victim's pocket. In other words, when the victim consumed the poison, he must have been alone. Alone with the inferior soap, whence wafted an inferior scent. And with the gridoloma lingering in the air, the victim met his end in tragic solitude. We can take comfort only in the fact that his soul was well cleansed on its way thereafter. This concludes the final act of Sherlock Sholmes' Great Deduction. There's one thing, Mr. Sholmes. You're disposed identifying the just one thing, aren't you, Mr. Naruhodo? Pray, what concerns you? Well, no matter how hungry he is, do you think the man would have eaten soap? It's quite apparent this man barely had a pen to his name. It's a curious thing, but to one so destitute, soap can appear quite irresistibly appetizing. How extraordinary. Well, there are soaps that are clearly designed to look like various objects, including fruits or vegetables. Granted, this one doesn't, so I'm not sure how to make that mistake. In truth, I've tried a little soap myself in the past. You've eaten it, you mean? My dear fellow, it was some time ago now. My postulation was that it would cleanse my gut. And did it? I wreathed it angrily on the floor and spilled the contents of my stomach, so yes, I believe it did. The experience has taught me a valuable lesson. Soap is quite poisonous. It's an unpleasant taste and leads to great discomfort. In summary, I cannot recommend it. Believe me, I wouldn't eat it even if you did. There's something that troubles me as well, actually. Oh, what's that? It's Mr. Natsume. Couldn't help but notice him shuddering and quivering. Shovering? For some reason, I mixed shuddering and quivering into one word. Almost as if Mr. Sholmes' deductions touched a nerve somehow. Nonsense. Well, the clenched teeth episode didn't last. I think, judging by Mr. Natsume's reaction, the great deductions may need some corrections to reach the actual truth. Yes. Mr. Sholmes' observations and deductions are sometimes a little too sharp. He has a tendency to nail on the side of the head and drive it in at an obtuse angle, and when he does that, it falls us to straighten things out a little. Alright then, let's see what we can do. Yes, we must pick out the keywords in Mr. Sholmes' brilliant deductions and discreetly exchange them for something that makes a little more sense. If we do that, I'm sure we'll arrive at what Mr. Sholmes meant to say in the first place. In that case, are we ready for the second performance today? Once again, my dear fellows, before you continue to light and wonder, let the curtain rise. Sherlock Sholmes, Logic and Reasoning Spectacular, Act 1. Course correction. Hold it, Mr. Sholmes. Cause of death, poisoning from soap injection. Careful observation reveals the events that transpired. Sizable bar of soap, meaningful, indubitably. Why is the soap set purposefully out like the victim's last supper, in fact? Yes. Could it be the man was about to eat it? Of course, the fork reveals the answer. Well, you can't deny a fork implies the man was about to eat something, or was eating something, or about to eat something. Yes, it's true. If I were to decide to eat some soap, though, I prefer to use a fork than attempt it with chopsticks. Of course, only half the bar of soap is left on the plate. But might there not be some other explanation? Something material that proves whether or not the man really ate the soap. I suppose you'd eat soap with a fork, wouldn't you? I don't think it's a question of which implement you use. You shouldn't eat soap full stop. Then why? Why does he have a fork in his hand? Oh dear, I understand your frustration, Mr. Naruhodo, but please don't take it out on me. The point is, if we decide the man used this fork to eat the soap, we wouldn't be changing Mr. Sholmes' deduction. So we really ought to consider other clues. Look, there's more soap on the floor here. Mr. Shakespeare must have really liked that stuff. Let's not jump to conclusions, Mr. Naruhodo. Look closely at the soap. Do you see that it would fit together perfectly with half the bar on the table? What can that be? I think that there are two halves of the same bar that broke apart, meaning he couldn't have eaten it. Think he's drinking tea with the soap? The cup's empty, so there's no way of knowing. Ah, how about this for an idea? Perhaps the cup was full of water, and the dissolving soap in it so he could gulp down as much as possible. Please remember that he may not actually have been the soap lover he's been made out to be.
Take that!
The other piece of soap. Could it be the man was about to eat it? Of course, the other piece of soap here reveals the answer. It being the other half of the soap on the table. In short, the victim was not eating soap at all. But it's obvious, really, for no depths of hunger could drive a man to attempt to eat soap. Even I, with my unquenchable thirst for practical knowledge, could only take a single bite. That begs the question, then, of how the man was poisoned, because there's no sign of any food on the table. An excellent observation, Mr. Naruhodo, and one that furnishes us with the answers we seek. For the London's foul soap is besmirched by foul poison. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison, tainted by the contents of the plate. Mr. Sholmes is still pushing the soap argument, then. Perhaps he's suggesting a man lick the soap rather than eat it. If soap in London's that poisonous, I don't think I want to be washing my hands with it. There's no signs of any food in this room at all. Of course, food isn't the only thing that passes people's lips, is it? Yeah, it's whatever he was drinking. Oops. Accidentally clicked outside the window. Yes. A Western vessel for serving infusions of dried tea leaves. A teacup, Mr. Naruhodo, as you well know. Stop putting on airs. And it's empty. Ah, so we've already established the victim wasn't eating soap when he died. However, there's significant evidence to suggest he was drinking tea. My thoughts exactly.
Take that!
Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the teacup. Indeed, cups have been a vessel of choice for practicing poisoners all over the ages. And it appears this victim drank every last drop. There's no sign of food anywhere in this room, which leads us to an immutable conclusion. The cause of death was clearly intoxication due to ingestion of poison contained within this teacup. Cause of death? Poison in the tea. Solved. Murder or self-deletion? Cause of death identified. We proceed to Act 2, where we ponder the next question. Was this self-deletion or murder? The audience will recall the death occurred during the victim's last supper. Did the man dine and die alone? Single teacup suggests the answer. The Western vessel for infused hot drinks again. It's already featured heavily in our deduction so far. Yes, we can imagine shortly before his death, Mr. Shakespeare was having a drink of tea. There'd be nothing remarkable about that, but what troubles me is Mr. Natsume's reaction when he heard Mr. Sholmes. There's more to this deduction than it seems. We must closely examine the scene of the crime for clues. I think we can see the bit here. Other teacup. It's another Western vessel from view. It's a teacup! And it too is empty. Given he's actually holding this one in hand, we can assume this is the cup from which Sir Shakespeare was actually drinking. But if that's the case, it changes everything. Everything we've deduced up until now has been turned on its head. I have a bad feeling about this, I almost don't want to say it. Yeah, I know exactly how you feel.
Take that!
But we have no choice but to keep going. We have to solve this mystery. Did the man die and die alone? The other teacups suggest the answer. Yes, there were 2 teacups in the room all along. Ah. In other words, it's a strong indication that in the victim's Last Supper, there was a guest present. At the very least, we can say now with certainty somebody else was here in that room last night, taking tea with the victim. What are you talking about? Utterly, unbelievably, unjustly unreasonable. To draw a conclusion on such meager evidence would be foolish, however, certainly. In which case, what more can we deduce about this possible guest at the table? Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. You mean to say you know exactly who was in this room? I mean, I think it's obvious now. Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is the broken lock. I'm not sure I like where this deduction's going now. I'm afraid it's too late to go back to the house and days of eating too much soap. But the identity of this guest who was here last night when the victim passed away is something I have a very bad feeling about. Well, you can try to ignore your feelings. We can't ignore the truth, Mr. Naruhodo. No, I suppose not. It's time to look around again. Candle. Even Mr. Shakespeare didn't eat candles, it seems. We've already established that he didn't eat soap either. Ah, do you think perhaps the guest brought this candle here last night? Even if he or she did, does it really reveal anything about the guest's identity? Good point, there goes my idea, snuffed out like that candle will be. If you sigh so deeply, Mr. Naruhodo, you're in danger of blowing out the flame. Broken lock. Oh dear, the latch is definitely broken, isn't it? The door was kicked in by Mr. Natsume, according to Mr. Garrett told the inspector. Who knew his short little, thin little legs had so much strength in them? I'm not sure the length of his legs is in any way significant here. Perhaps this says more about this poor state of the door than Mr. Natsume's strength, actually. Careful, if he overheard that remark, he'd almost certainly have a lively response. I don't know, can this broken lock really tell us anything about who was here? It's empty. Empty of liquid, but full of air. Makes you think, doesn't it? Makes me think you're full of hot air. We should be thinking about who else was in the room at the time. Oh, bother. Oh, Shizada's quip and response is cleverer than my original riddle. At first glance, seems the only thing in this room are a makeshift stage and the costumes. However, look at these 3 books initially. Wonder what they are. Let's see, the titles read The Picture of Monsieur Canterbury Yearnings and A Meal for Gabaroo. In other words, the ones from... Wait, I'm sure I've heard those titles before. It could just be an incredible coincidence, but they're the exact same 3 books Mr. Natsume purchased the other day. Yes, on the day of the unfortunate incident where Miss Green was stabbed. So Soseki-san had just been in a bookshop and brought them, that's right. And now those 3 titles are here for the room of the victim. Yet Mr. Natsume claims they've not been here before. What does this mean, you think? I really don't know what to make of it. Pile of familiar books.
Take that!
Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, are the pile of familiar books. Quite so, it's no mere coincidence these 3 tiles are here in the room, it's a link to the truth. Ah! Mr. Natsume, you purchased these books 4 days ago at the secondhand bookshop. That's just a coincidence. And in that case, you will be able to bring the same 3 titles for your own room, will you not? This very moment. No, never, not non-negotiable. If you can't bring your own copies here, it proves that these 3 books are in fact yours. Having purchased the days ago and returned to your lodgings, you were arrested the very next day. So you could conceivably have brought the books here on that evening, but you never mentioned that. In other words, you could only have brought these 3 books here to the victim's room after the case. He's dancing his way into the... I like that. last night, having returned to your lodgings after the trial concluded at the Old Bailey. Wow. In short, there's only one possible conclusion. The victim died here in his room last night as a result of poisoning. And that same night, the victim had a visitor. And that visitor was you, Mr. Natsume. Thus concludes the final act of Sherlock Holmes' Great Deduction. At the scene. Deduction complete. Elementary. Not again, not again, not again. Not again. Well then, Mr. Natsume, it would appear you're gonna have to accompany me down the yard. Again. Oh wait. Hold your horses. Yes. Door, key, locked, entry, exit, entirely impossible. He's so flustered, he's being more strange than normal. What, you think that's an alibi? You could have just made a copy. Wait, what? You live in the same building after all. You have plenty of opportunity, I'm sure. Oh, but... Misery me. Sorry, you'll get your chance to give your side of the story later. Facts speak for themselves, Mr. Mustache. Ah, you horrible Sherlock Holmes. He really has found himself an arch rival now, hasn't he? Alright, come on now, no dilly-dallying. Outside, there's a carriage waiting. Mr. Locum's doing Mr. Naruto Esquire. I never imagined I'd be in this position again, but... You have to help me, please. Please, I'm innocent. Alright, I understand. We'll come to your cell later and talk about it. And one more thing. Oh, yes. My poor little kitty cat. Please give him his breakfast for me. And so, his evil curse still apparently unbroken, Sekizan found himself once again the prime suspect in a case of murder. Thanks to the incriminating deduction of great detective. My dear fellow, that honor belongs to you. Well, at least that means Inspector Gregson's no longer here. We can examine the crime scene in more detail. Yes, that's right. Oh, of course. What? I forgot what the inspector mentioned before. There's the landlord, Mr. Garrett, who discovered Mr. Shakespeare. Mr. John Garrett, yes. I expect we can find him in the sitting room on the top floor as usual. Right, we must remember to go and talk to him later then. As we've seen from the outside, this window is completely bricked up. A vestige of the former window tax that the Britons had to pay. What strange things they used to tax in Great Britain. I mean, making people pay for the number of windows they have in a property, that's extraordinary. It's heartbreaking to think of the poor having to block up their windows just to avoid an unaffordable tax. Oh, what is it, Mr. Zato? If you look closely, a number of the bricks are loose. Oh yes, it looks as though an amateur has broken out a few of them here. Was it Mr. Shakespeare who did it? Being the lodger renting this room. Ah, look at this, Mr. Naruhodo. On the outside, there's a little ledge. There's even something out on it. Wait outside. More bars of soap. Brr, it's so cold outside. You can feel it through this gap. It did snow last night. It would be cold. But more importantly, what is on the ledge out there? What are those snow-covered lumps? It's more bars of soap. Soap? What are bars of soap doing lined up on the ledge outside the window? I have no idea, but the pair of them look rather charming like that. Still, that's very strange, isn't it? Bars of soap lined up outside the window. Perhaps we should take one. There are two after all. Oh dear. I suppose we could. Oh, what's this? Look here at this soap. You see in the middle there? A patch, it's a different color. It's sort of transparent, but some sort of fancy design, I suppose, only in Great Britain. Looks like the Hinamaru flag of Japan, doesn't it? How wonderful. It's probably an expensive brand. Expensive, and what's it doing in this ramshackle old room? Look at these extravagant, bright costumes. Somehow they look out of place in this room with its grim, shady goings-on. This one looks like a king's attire. King, I've always dreamt of being a king. Oh, you think it'd be more suited to a feudal lord? A daimyo or some... with a shomage top knot? Every Japanese man wishes he had one. Oh, you'd look wonderful with one. You already have the sword. Can you imagine what would happen if I walked around the streets of London with that kind of hairstyle and a sword? That would probably be about as stereotypical as a British person with a top hat and cane. There's not much on these shelves, is there? Just a wine glass and bottle. And both of them are cracked. Yeah, not much use, are they? Oh, it just reminded the Reaper, that's all. Oh. Prosecutor Von Zykes. Yeah, he's so reckless with those wine glasses. I just think it's a waste and he should donate some to the needy. You can suggest it next time we meet. Oh, the poor man. So young to die. Do you suppose it was a very painful death, being poisoned as he was? I don't know. All we can do now is hope he'll be reborn into a better life. Yes, I suppose you're right. I wonder... Do you think putting our hands together in a Japanese prayer will help a British soul? Sorry. I'm sure I had a reference at the ready for just such an occasion as this, actually. This book is entitled The Beginner's Guide to Praying for the Departed, the British Way. I'll just reread it now, one moment. There's quite a spine on that book, isn't there? And here we have another disproportionately large machine. It looks like a meter of some kind. This is a gas meter, I think. It seems that this district, residents pay for gas so they use it with coins. I see. Now that you pointed out, I can see that there's a slot there that looks like it would take a coin. So you mean if you put a coin in there... That's right, that would buy you about 2 hours of gas for lights and heating. So if you're a poor person with no money, you'd have to sleep in the freezing cold and darkness. Yeah, so if you're a scatterbrain with no change because you forgot to exchange your money at the bank, thank goodness there's no meter in our office. This is a gas wall light, isn't it? It must be connected to the gas pipe in the wall. Gas light's a gas stove. London really is a city of gas. Now that I think about it, Mr. and Mrs. Garrett have had an open fire at the top floor, didn't they? Oh, yes, you're right. I don't recall seeing a gas stove up there. Well, I much prefer a real fire anyway. It's so much cozier. Oh, I see something on the ground here. What's this? Oh, what's this? It looks like a part of an envelope, I think. Yes, I think you may be right. Perhaps it was torn off when the letter was opened. Is that significant? Well, it's a little out of place, perhaps. When you look around the room, there's no sign of a letter, or the rest of the envelope, in fact, is there? Ah, she's right. And yet here we have the torn-off end of an envelope. Just strikes me as unusual. I agree, we better take this just in case. And I noticed there's a piece of wood here that's... Oh. I thought maybe that this one, since it's a bit of a convenient square compared to the other, would mean it was a secret compartment or something, but that does not appear to be the case, unfortunately. This is some sort of makeshift stage, isn't it? Where does the audience sit, though, for the nightly Shakes performances? Actors aspiring to the great stage must practice their art, Mr. Naruhodo, with or without an audience. In fact, on a related note, perhaps you should set up a mock bench for your defense in your office. What? Then you could practice your art every single day. I'll think about it if you promise to don a beard and play the role of a judge. Well, if that would help you achieve your goal. This is... Oh, this I have to see. Hmm, 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 hmm. Looks like I've examined everything thoroughly. So let us move to the Mr. Garrett's house. We've got a lot of investigating to do. 21st of February, the Garrett's room. Here we are again, the eccentric landlord's eccentric top floor abode, and looks like everything's been fixed up. Everything was all messed up after the fight they had, but now everything seems to be fine again. We're here because Mr. Garrett's wanted to discover the incident this morning. Don't forget. Ah, you chaps, eh? Yes, good morning, sir. Thank you for your cooperation, courtiers, today. It was quite a trial. As much for Mr. Garrett as anyone, really. Came strapped big here after all that business in the Old Bailey yesterday. Didn't expect to wake up to more bally nonsense this morning. I wonder if you wouldn't mind telling us exactly what happened, Mr. Garrett. Oh, yes, I suppose you'd like to know all about that, and the dead loss of an actor trapped in the ground floor room. Those were exactly Mr. Gregson's words, weren't they? Alright, this morning's incident. It must have been a real shock for you this morning to hear that you discovered what had happened. Oh, well, that hopeless actor chap rises at 5 o'clock sharp every morning without fail. But at 5:30 this morning, he still hadn't hit the gas. So I went down and knocked on his door, but no bally answer. That's when you broke into his room by kicking down the door? Well, I called on that rum-looking Japanese chap to do the grunt work, of course. Wasn't it a little premature to kick the door down, and the man could have just overslept by half an hour? That's very true, Mr. Naruhodo. But if 30 minutes oversleeping warranted such behavior, I'd kick your door down every morning. Well, you know, better be safe than sorry and all that. Is it just me, or is he avoiding our gaze now all of a sudden? Except that it was a sorry situation indeed you found on the far side of the door. Mr. Shakespeare. The victim's name is Mr. Shakespeare, I believe, is that right? Yes, William Shakespeare took the ground floor room 3 months ago now. And, how would you describe him? In a word, destitute. Destitute? Well, let's face it, the only redeeming feature of that room is the cheap rent. Anyone to live in a place like that is either broke or has a bally scroll. And it's hard to choose which category Soseki would fall into. Mr. Naruhodo, that's a little rude. Oh, he was doing research as well. Research? Into what? Shakespeare, of course, Shakespeare. Read a few plays, the old bard myself, you know. Oh, Romeo and Hamlet and all that. Yes, William Shakespeare is of England's most highly regarded classical playwrights and authors. He's known as Asao in Japanese, as you know, and many of his works have already been translated. It seems incredible that Shakespeare was shortened to Sao. Someone was a bit too heavy-handed there. There were a lot of costumes in the victim's room, actually, weren't there? Of course, Mr. Natsume is a scholar in English literature as well. I imagine he and Mr. Shakespeare would have had much in common. Shakespeare's interpretation disagreement leads to shocking murder. Let's hope it's not that. Mr. Naruhodo, really? How rude. After Mr. Natsume's trial, you came straight to here, I believe, didn't you? Did you notice anything strange between them this morning? Well, no, it must have been 6 in the evening by the time I got home. Snow was coming down rather heavily, as I remember, and it was completely dark already. That failed actor chap was out at the time. Mr. Garrett had noticed there was no light from his room or something, I suppose. Couldn't summon the energy for anything much, so I just sat in front of the fire up here. It was after 8 before Shakespeare got back. And the chap was up until 1 past 1 in the morning, I'll have you know. Suppose he met his end sometime after that. I was asleep by then, so I'm rather in the dark there. Well, thank you. That was very illuminating. Get it because of the dark. Is everything alright, Mr. Zato? Well, I just think it's a little strange, that's all. Mr. Garrideb, you were up here in your room all evening, if I've understood correctly. I'm not a big fan of stairs, not with this blasted leg. Then, how is it that you seem to know? The precise movements of your tenants on the ground floor, I mean. That's a good point. Can't imagine you could hear noises from the ground floor all the way up here. Right, he was about to answer this in the previous game, but his wife would always force him to stop talking. However, she's not here, so... This old man like to spy on his tenants, is that it? I say, I know what you're thinking, and it's a bally outrage. I'm ex-military, don't you know? I don't go around spying on my tenants. Why would I? Then, how did you know, Mr. Garrideb? It's a gas woman. The gas tells me everything. The gas? Speaking gas? What on earth do you mean, sir? How can gas tell you anything, let alone everything? Well, as you're probably aware, the gas is supplied to the building by pipes. Yeah, I more or less worked that out. Every room in the building is connected by a single pipe to the main gas outside, and the gas company supplies gas to properties via the main. Yeah, I understand that too. Alright, let me see how I can explain. Let's say I was to light the gas lamps up here. What do you suppose would happen? Well, obviously the room would get brighter. Exactly, but at the same time, the lights in all the other rooms of the house would dim for a moment. They dim? Why? Perhaps it's because when you light a gas lamp, it briefly uses more gas than usual, and that reduces the amount in the pipe for the other lamps that are connected to it. That might explain why the other lamps dim momentarily, isn't it? Oh, yes, of course, because everything's connected to a single supply pipe. Is that supposed to happen, though? It sounds rather undesirable. Still a good point. Fact is, the gas company's pipes in these parts are pretty hopeless, long worn out, and barely got any gas them to start with. The opposite's also true, of course. Extinguish the lamps up here, and they glow brighter in the rest of the house. Ah, right. So by watching the flickering of lamps in one room, you can determine what's happening elsewhere. You've got it. Oh, of course, because when people come back home in the evening and before they go to sleep at night, what they're guaranteed to do is either to light or put out their gas lamps and fires. Clever. In point of fact, the room on the ground floor and the one above it use slightly different amounts of gas. Watching the lights near closely, I can work almost exactly what's happening in the entire house. Gosh, that's fascinating, Mr. Garrideb. Absolutely fascinating. Oh, well, nothing to it, really. And I can't really see how that's going to help us with the case either. What I'd like to know is why Mr. Garrideb is so interested in what his tenants are up to in the first place. I feel like there's more to it than just, you know, idle curiosity. There's a single apron drawing on that enormous cannon-shaped clothes horse. Look. No, Mrs. Naruhodo, that's a real cannon. Oh, I knew that. I'm testing you. Piece of history, that is. Seen plenty of action on the battlefield, I can tell you. Now, the old girl and I are just enjoying the peace and quiet of retirement together. And of course, she'd come in handy if the enemy decided to launch an attack again. Is there a war going on I don't know about? That's your military uniform, isn't it, Mr. Garrideb? Well, ceremonial garb, yes. Been hanging on the wall ever since my retirement bash. Not in active service now, you know. Doesn't mean much to me anymore. You could have the old thing if you wanted it. Well, it might suit Lord Van Zykes, perhaps. An overly ostentatious outfit could be just what he needs. Very tactful, Miss Susato, very tactful indeed. Good to see Mr. Garrideb's Medal of Honor still proudly displayed on the wall. The inscription reads, for distinguished participation, if you remember. Yeah, I remember, because I remember thinking even I might stand a chance of picking up honors like that. Wouldn't know what to look at me now, but I had my devil-may-care days, you know. Devil-may-care, what'd you get up to? Well, all in the past now, of course, and best left there. Best not, now I want to know. You look very dashing in your uniform there, Mr. Girdib. Ah, that old portrait, eh? Drawn by an art student who used to rent the room downstairs. Oh, you look so wonderfully young, courageous, and strong. Yes, well, the chap presented it to me one day and asked if I had let him off a month's rent return. Oh, I see. You did, presumably? I bally well did not. Oh. Portrait's a portrait, but rent is rent. Eh. And yet still prominently there on the wall. Well, we know that what that screen is hiding now. The aftermath of a fiery altercation the other day. I don't suppose I'll be able to clear that mess up for some time now. Oh dear, this must be a very difficult situation for you. I'll say, people talk about the twists of fate and whatnot. This is a twist and a half, a rotten show all around. He's clearly struggling with everything that's happened. An impressive collection of cakes on that fancy silver stand there. Just sure it was full of cakes when we first investigated here as well. Yes, quite right. I haven't touched it since. I haven't done much at all, really, since it happened. Time rather stood still for me, you know. Oh. Time has stood still? Now that's an interesting phrase. I may be able to use that excuse when next I'm supposed to be tidying the office. You know, you could just tidy up Mr. Naruhodo. Nothing of note. Yeah, these shelves look like they've been completely torn apart by a wild beast. Reminds me of the Battle of my Wand. Don't you know? The experiences of a seasoned veteran. We had us all surrounded on all sides. We really thought we were done for. The whole Bali company. We're taking a real pounding with our cannons, so all we could do was run for our lives. Oh, I thought that story was going to a different direction, actually. Well, the whole experience taught me one thing, I can tell you. When you're done for, you're really done for. That's not what a lawyer often finds himself under fire wants to hear. There's a good view over there in the wintry east stand up from here. It's an oppressively gray scene. There's nothing comparable in Japan. And down below, Briar Road, partly blanketed in snow. And the pavement where poor Miss Green was struck in the back by that knife. Think about it, this is the only room in this building that actually has a window to the outside world. Sometimes Great Britain really does seem like a strange land, doesn't it? I suppose all foreign cultures seem strange at first. Imagine how an Englishman must feel arriving in Japan and seeing with all those top knots. Well, I suppose that is a good point. 21st of February, Briar Road. With the exception of the top floor, Mr. Mears' garret live, all the windows are bricked up. Yes, that's because of an old window tax that was charged on the number of windows a property had. In order to pay less tax, the poorer members of society filled in many of their windows. But the tax has since been abolished, hasn't it? So the windows could be opened up again, surely. Unfortunately, it appears the residents of this district can't afford to pay to have that work done. Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs. Especially for people like poor Mr. Natsume, who have lived all cooped up in the windowless room. I suppose that's the price you pay for living in a very cheap accommodation. It all seems rather pointless when you put it like that. There always seems to be a bicycle outside the Garrett residence. I read that bicycles are extremely popular all over Great Britain at the moment, in fact. This one seems very warped, though, especially the front wheel. Is that to make it more of a challenge to ride, you think? No, I'm afraid that may just be a result of the rider's incompetence. For the front wheel to be so badly warped, I'm afraid the rider may have been similarly affected. Oh, then there's a good chance Mr. Natsume's been practicing on his bicycle, I think. Oh dear, I fear you may be right. Alright, the soap. You can see one of them out here. Nothing particular of note. Why has somebody built this snowman on some sort of pedestal, you think? That's not a pedestal, Mr. Naruhodo. That's part of the snowman's body. Oh, really? It already has a perfectly good body. Well, it's true that British snowmen are usually made with 2 balls of snow. Perhaps this is a foreigner? And now we're looking at him as if he's strange. Poor man, I know how he feels. If anything, it's a Japanese and British 2-ball snowman that are the strange ones, isn't it? After all, real people have 3 sections: head, torso, and legs. You ever think perhaps you think about things too much? London's blanked in fog again today. The sky is covered in cloud. If we've looked carefully in the distance, you can just make out the Crystal Tower being built. Ah, the Crystal Tower, yes, the centerpiece of Great Britain's exhibition to open in 6 months' time. Everyone's talking about the Great Exposition of London at the moment, I guess. Well, it's to be the largest event of its kind anywhere in the world, with technology and scientists from all over. I can't wait for it myself. You think visiting students from the Far East like us would be granted entry? The last great exhibition that was held in London had more than 6 million viewers, it seems. And this time the British are determined to make an even bigger success to outdo the Paris expedition. I see, that's an incredible number of people. With so many people expected to attend, we should easily be able to slip in unnoticed. You know, there's always the honest approach of buying tickets at the main entrance, Mr. Naruhodo. I think I've investigated everything, so we can now go here. Local prison, cell 9. Oh, he's not here yet, is it? I feel like we need to spend a little more time investigating here. Alright. Normally I just click on what I want to investigate, but it might be easier to just, Oh, here we are. Scanning through like that makes it easier when I'm having trouble figuring out where to go next. Ah, one of the teacups Mr. Shakespeare and his guest drank from last night. Don't go drinking from them, Mr. Naruhodo. There's a bit of poison inside. I'm not planning on drinking any, don't worry. Anyway, the cups are both empty. That's true. So one must Mr. Shakespeare's and the other must be the cup Mr. Natsume was drinking from. Lokia? And yeah, more Ace Attorney. Right now we're doing a flashback. I'm in the 2nd game now, but this is technically one that took place shortly after the 3rd case in the last game, the one where we defended the Japanese writer student from the assault case. But this one is an actual murder case, and it sadly seems he may be in... Oh, the 2nd game? Yeah, Ace Attorney Chronicles has 2 games in it. Ace Attorney Adventures 1 and Ace Attorney Adventures 2. Yeah, I finished up the first one a little bit ago, and so now I'm pretty excited to start the 2nd. Well, this is technically the 2nd case, but yeah, it's a flashback, probably to recap as well. They briefly mentioned some stuff in the last one, but they didn't go into it at all. Obviously, so to have it here instead. Bososeki-san wasn't poisoned. Perhaps we should take these so we can examine them in more detail later. Pair of teacups. Alright, so... Alright. Looks like you're having a good old snoop around, eh? Oh, Inspector Gregson, back so soon. After I threw that little Japanese fellow in the brig, I went and reported this to the investigation division. 5 minutes time, this place will be cordoned off by the yard. Oh, I see. Well, we'd better be leaving then. Poor Mr. Natsume must be feeling very low being back in the cell again so soon. I'm sure we should probably go and... Wait a minute. What the hell? What's wrong, Mr. Naruhodo? Ah! He's alive! Out, out, rekindle life's but a walking shadow. A poor player. that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. Now, how sounded the next part? It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Indeed, oh happy day. What? Walking Dead? The fella isn't dead at all? What was that nonsense he was saying, though? I think, yes, it was from William Shakespeare's Macbeth. The soliloquy from Act 5, Scene 5. Shakespeare. Ah, yes, the one who makes a living jumping on things at the behest of the Queen. So basically, ancient Victorian Super Mario. So it was that victim, the victim, Mr. William Shakespeare, came back to life. If the man had indeed been poisoned, it transpired that it hadn't killed him. He was taken by the emergency carriage to a nearby hospital for treatment, and Inspector Gregson evicted us from the scene of the crime, whatever that now was. Well, that's interesting. I don't remember the last time we did a murder case where the victim was still alive. Wait, no, that was the third case last game, because that was technically an assault case where the victim was still alive. Even though everyone kept calling them the murder victim. What do you think will happen now? That's a good question. What a strange situation for Mr. Natsume, arrested for murder, but then the victim comes back to life. I think perhaps the victim was never dead in the first place. It seems very likely that Mr. Shakespeare did consume poison, as we deduced, whether it was an accident, attempted self-deletion, or attempted murder. Until the truth can be established, I imagine the police will keep Mr. Natsume in custody. I suppose so. Let's hope it doesn't come to anything more than a night in the cells, at the very least. Oh, what's this? What's this man doing over there? Looks like he's trying to see into Soseki-san's lodgings. Is something wrong, Mr. No? Excuse me, could we have a word? Ah. Wait, what's that? Is that a bag that looks like a bee's abdomen? He just, ran off. I feel sure I've seen that man somewhere before. Where was it? I do too, but I don't remember. Of course, from the last game, him and Shakespeare showed up for a brief period of time. But again, they were just only briefly touched upon. Well, I think we've done as much investigating here as we can, I think. Perhaps we ought to go to prison and speak with Mr. Natsume. A good idea. Poor Natsume. Since this is a flashback, he technically only just got freed from the last case, only to now be thrown to the slammer again. I guess he wasn't kidding when he said the place he lived was cursed. I can see why he decided to just go back to Japan. Look, Mr. Naruhodo. Mr. Natsume, have the police finished questioning you now? Locum student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. Yes. What is he? Tell me. Is he a ghost? Is he here to haunt me? Let me guess. You're talking about Mr. Sholmes? He actually called himself a great detective, Mr. Natsume. Not a ghost. Oh, but his diabolical deductions are not of this world. They've left me. Ah, cursed. I'm cursed, I tell you. Well, that sort of hurts. Credit where credit is due, Mr. Naruhodo. You were heavily involved in the deduction as well. Yes, moving on. We have some wonderful news. Oh? The victim that we all thought was dead has come back to life again! Now, in absolutely worst case, you can only be tried for attempted murder. That's, great, isn't it, Mr. Natsume? It's terrible! Oh. I'm stuck in the cell, suffering for some silly wrong end of the stick. You did it, didn't you? Confess, you're a killer. Why the mustache? Constant questions. I'm sorry to hear that. Ah, Goldfish man, make up your mind, are you dead or alive? We're gonna come back to life, why bother dying? Wickedly wishy-washy William. Well, it seems likely Mr. Shakespeare was never actually dead in the first place. Yes, that makes some sense. And I'm pleased that he's alive. Dear, he's alive, of course. Our lively debate last night was much fun. I'd be sad to think it was our last. Oops. Mr. Natsume, does this mean that you did in fact see the victim last night? You were with Mr. Shakespeare, didn't you? I'm not saying another word. I demand have a lawyer present. What do you think I am? Please, Mr. Natsume, we need to hear from your side of the story. So why am I cursed like this? Yeah, he tried to hide that he was there last night because he had only just gotten out and he was already being sent in there. Alright, first let's go with what happened. Can you tell us exactly what happened last night then, Mr. Natsume? There's nothing to tell, but, Mr. Naruhodo Esquire, I'm eternally grateful for you for helping with that accursed case yesterday. The case that saw poor Miss Green hospitalized after she ended up with a knife in her back. It's hard to believe that was only yesterday. After the trial was over, I trudged my weary way back to my lowly lodgings, and that evening at past 9 it must have been, I visited Mr. Shakespeare. So you did go to the victim's room then? As we feared. I didn't do anything wrong. I had never been to his room before. This was the first time. And then what made you just decide to go exactly? I bumped into him when I arrived back at the house. Got to chatting and developed into a discussion. But he had to go out, so I bade him farewell. That ties in with Mr. Garrett said. The victim went out and came back after 8. We met again later that evening. Around 9 or just after, I took him some nice tea I brewed as a gift. So as you brought the tea, they'd clearly been drunk at the scene. And I suppose you were discussing the works of Shakespeare, were you? Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. Romeo, Juliet, who is the stronger? It was a delightful debate. If I remember right, doesn't Romeo and Juliet have Romeo introduced with him angsting over the fact he'd just broken up with his previous girlfriend? I'm sure. Such a stimulating subject, Shakespeare. And the debate became very heated, so you slipped poison into Mr. Shakespeare's tea? No, never, not at all. Team Juliet won, and that was me. And when I left his room, flamboyantly, fellow was fighting fit, I swear, categorically. And about the cursed existence here. Mr. Natsume, you often say the same thing about yourself, I notice. That you have a quote-unquote cursed existence? I'm sure I've mentioned this to you before, but I've been here in Great Britain for a year now, and in that time, I've learned that there's no place for me. It can be very trying to live in a foreign land and adapt to ways of another culture. There are foreigners everywhere I look. They all stare at me, they all laugh. That's the impression I get whenever I go out. It makes me scared to leave my room. Which is why I've become a recluse. But even in my room, I find no respite from my fears. I've moved more times than I can remember. And then, 1 week ago, I moved into Briar Road. But why? I mean, why did you choose that particular place? It doesn't seem very comfortable, if we're blunt. Because the rent is cheap. I have so little money, it spoke to me. The rent? Obviously, there's a reason why it's cheap. Because the room is cursed. Cursed? Cursed how? Previous occupant, the man who lived there before I took the room, died there. Oh no. Yeah, they did briefly discuss the room being cursed in the last game, but Sholmes requested that we leave that alone and focus on the case at hand. Oh no. He was only a young man, but one morning he was found dead and no one could explain why. Surely no one would want to live in a room with a history like that. I didn't. When the letting agent recommended the place, I wavered. But I want books. Books cost money. A horrible history is a small price to pay. Literally a small price to pay, given the rent is apparently just that cheap. When I realized it meant I could buy more books, I signed the lease like lightning. Brave or blinkered? But after I moved on, I soon came to realize what I'd done. I realized how horrible that room's history really was. Gosh, is it really so awful? How did the room's horrible history affect you, Mr. Natsume? What happened? At first, it was just a feeling. The feeling of beady eyes boring into my back, watching me. Do you think that might just have been your mind playing tricks on you? No. My mind doesn't know any tricks. It was someone else. It's been one long nightmare ever since I was given the keys to the place. A nightmare? You've been having bad dreams, you mean? All the souls who died in that room lean over to me in my sleep and try to strangle me. That really is horrible. And now I've come to think of it, it happened again last night too. The very same night Mr. Shakespeare was writhing in agony from the poison in his body. I was on the verge of being suffocated silently by the miserable spirits in my room. You simply must move out of that room as soon as possible. Yes, you're right, I know it, and that's why I'm already searching for the next room in history to call home. I think perhaps you should try to avoid accommodation with any kind of history at all. Otherwise I'm scared you yourself may become history. Oh phew, Suzato-san really knows how to make the man listen. Of course, Mr. Lord of the Manor is worried about the curse in my room as well. You mean Miss Garrett? Yes. He knows that if people keep dying there, he'll never be able to rent it out again. Well, that's true. I, for one, wouldn't go near the place. Perhaps that may explain why the landlord paid so much attention to the gas lamps in his tense movements. You mean because he's worried about their well-being? He does seem unusually keen in the interest in the amount of gas in the pipes. There must be a reason why he keeps such close tabs on the occupants of his let rooms. What do you mean he pays so much attention to the gas lamps? Oh, dear, no, it's nothing to do with you, Mr. Natsume. Please, forget I said anything. Oh, now you're talking about me behind my back as well. What's important is that Mr. Shakespeare isn't in fact dead at all. Once he's come around, he'll be able to tell us what happened. We'll be able to get you released. Yes, please, I do hope you're right. Excuse me. Oh, Inspector Gregson! I couldn't help overhearing what you just said. And on that note, I have some good news and some bad news. Which do you want first? Always, every time, the bad news comes first. When hope is all you have, hold on to it. That's my guiding principle. Right, well, in that case, the good news it is. What? Sorry, but it's just a lot easier to explain everything that way. Then why'd you ask me for my preference? Well, as you might have heard, the victim, Mr. Shakespeare, was just unconscious. He's come around now. Yeah, we saw it happen in all its terrifying glory. He's still being treated by the doctors, but we've managed to get a written statement from him already. Oh, isn't that wonderful, Mr. Natsume? Oh, thank goodness. It's all over then? I can leave this somber cell? Sorry, no, that's not on the cards. Why ever not, Inspector? Mr. Shakespeare has implicated that someone's being responsible happened last night. Implicated someone? Oh dear. You don't mean... Sorry to say I do, yes. He's pointed the finger at you, Mr. Natsume. Ah. By sweet poison did he seek to end my life. That wickedest native, Soseki Natsume. No. I'm afraid you'll be appearing in court as planned. You'll be wanting to make the necessary preparations. No. And so, once again, Soseki found himself having to take the dock in the Old Bailey. Whether his room was haunted or whether he was just terribly unlucky, I knew I had no choice. The following day, I would represent him in court and do my utmost to break the curse that blighted him. Well, I have a strong feeling this case is going to be a lot easier than the first one, that's for sure. For some reason, the first cases of both of these games were ridiculously tricky. Great Ace Attorney Adventures 2, as you can see. #22nd of February, 9:23 a.m. The Old Bailey. Defendant's antechamber. Now the Old Bailey. This place always makes me feel strange. I seem to get chills down my spine and break out in nervous sweat all at the same time. Well, I didn't think I'd be back here so soon. That's my line. Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Natsume. It was only 2 days ago that I was declared not guilty here. Yeah, we somehow managed to prove he didn't stab Miss Green in the back. But now this, another morning, another murder, and here I am again, this hellhole. Can't keep coming to court. I'm beginning to think he's right. It really does seem as though he's cursed. Mr. Naruhodo, I'm afraid I have bad news. Oh. Oh, Mr. Natsume, good morning. Yes, morning. So, here we are again? Yes, again. Judicial Assistant Miss Mikotab Esquires, what's the bad news? Oh dear, you heard, did you? Are you coming shouting at the top of your voice? People can't help but hear what you have to say. Oh, I am sorry. You've done nothing wrong, Miss Susato. Now, what is it? Well, it seems that the prosecution in today's trial will be led by Baron von Zykes. But von Zykes? Gah. Oh no, oh no. Well, we know it from the end of the last game that von Zykes is specifically following this case specifically because he wants to face us. He is unfortunately very racist against the Japanese due to a betrayal in his past, which is bad news for our very Japanese protagonist. But, well, the so-called Reaper of Bailey, the most legendary prosecutor in the land. In the trial 2 days ago, he pursued Soseki-san and I relentlessly. Of course, by the skin of our teeth, we managed to pull through. But still. Perhaps Mr. Natsume's acquittal in the last trial wasn't the end of the matter. After all, yeah, I know what you're thinking. The legend of the Reaper that says, nothing can save a person in the dock when Lord Van Zykes is the prosecutor. Oh no. Even if the person's found not guilty, the accused will meet a mysterious end one way or another. And we've experienced it firsthand. A man we successfully defended met the most terrifying end after his acquittal, right here in the Old Bailey. I will be spoiling stuff from the first game, but I'm assuming that since someone's watching this, they're probably going to be doing it in order. But yeah, I did like the whole thing they had going with Mr. McGilded in the last game. I don't regret trying to think he was innocent until the last minute, because if anything else, it's probably better that I chose one option and stuck to it until the evidence finally told me which one I needed to follow. There have been similar cases in previous Ace Attorney games, but I do think I like Mr. McGilded more than the ones in the previous games. Or maybe I just had a lot of fun doing his Irish accent. Do I have to put up with those ice-cold eyes boring into my soul again? Cursed by evil spirits and now by the Reaper himself. Pair of petrifying perils, potentially. Well, if it's, potentially... At least you appear to have hope, Mr. Natsume. Locum student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. Yes. I'm innocent. You have to believe me. You more than anyone now. Don't worry. I'll be your steadfast ally every step of the way in this battle, I promise. And this promises to be a hard battle, I fear. Since this is the second case, I'm hoping it's easier than the first one, but I guess we'll see. Von Zykes is pretty good at poking holes in our defense. Well, the trial is scheduled to begin shortly. We should move into the courtroom. Let's go. Oh yes, I forgot to say. I'm afraid he won't be able to make it. Mr. Sholmes, I mean. That's probably for the best, honestly. Oh, if he were here, I might be tempted to rely on his help. That could be seen as a weakness. If Lord Van Zykes were to notice, he'd prey on it mercilessly. At least that's my gut feeling. Mr. Naruhodo. You're right, yes, you're so right. Oh, well said, Naruhodo Esquire. I swear by the sword at my side, the spirit of Cosma that it harbors. I'll show him what a Japanese lawyer can do. I'll set you free with honor. Oh, yes. Mm-mm. 22nd of February, 9:40 a.m., the Old Bailey. Courtroom. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare the court in session. I now call upon the counsels of the prosecution and defense to declare their willingness to proceed. Our Van Zyk's little prosecution is ready. I need to try and give more of a vampire accent than a Russian one, because sometimes the ones I try to give him kind of mix up. The defense is ready, my lord. Readiness for the trial, my learned friend, is not what the defense needs. What you need is readiness for your inevitable defeat. It's not just my imagination, it's really there. Lord Van Zykes has such an animosity towards us for some reason. Towards us Japanese for some reason. It was some time ago now he first became known as the Reaper of Bailey, I believe. These past few years he hasn't appeared in court at all. Yet now he's back in the courtroom. Though for some reason, only when I'm defending. This Reaper, with his curious disdain for us Japanese, is a prosecutor shrouded in mystery. Still, this isn't the time to be pondering that. I have to concentrate on Soseki-san's trial. Furthermore, I will now call upon the 6 ladies and gentlemen of the jury. You have been chosen at random to represent the will of the people in this trial. Are you ready to fulfill your duty? Absolutely, I had a feel Slarkin wasn't innocent before. I must say, I feel especially ruthless these days. My hat refuses to sit right. Oh, well, I rather like how you're wearing your hat. I think the ruthless look is very fetching, actually. I need to be somewhere at 10 o'clock. I have a very important meeting. Let's make this quick. I couldn't agree more. I need to take home 5 bob tonight or the missus will go through the roof. Oh, may the Lord shows all the light here, and lead his flock to a righteous verdict. The British jury system is so different to our own, isn't it? It's quite extraordinary to think the power of judgment is in the hands of 6 members of the public. And the judge can only pass sentence once all jurors are in agreement to the defendant's guilt. 6 citizens at London, chosen at supposedly random. Chosen at random, or at least that's the idea. These are almost all exactly the ones from the previous trial. The prosecution would draw attention to the fact that the accused was on trial here but 2 days ago. Accordingly, where possible, the same jurors have been asked to return for duty today. Okay, that explains it. Very well, let us commence with the trial. Lord Van Zykes, your opening statement, please. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is not the intent of the prosecution to cast doubt over your past decision. However, the innocent verdict afforded this eccentric man before has had dire consequences. Did the accused repent of his wrongdoing in that affair? Far from it. Instead, he uses freedom to perpetrate a most blood-curdling crime, namely attempted murder of his neighboring lodger, an innocent Englishman. To explain the circumstances of the crime, the prosecution calls the first witnesses to the stand. The detective responsible for investigating the scene and the accused himself. Interesting. Witnesses, state your names and occupations, please. Yes, sir. Tobias Gregson, Detective Inspector at Scotland Yard's Homicide Division. Soseki Natsume from the Empire of Japan. My government ordered me to come here as a student to study your language and culture. Mr. Natsume? Yes, my lord, sir. I'm quite sure I'm not mistaken that you swore an oath never to set foot in my courtroom again. I remember as if it were yesterday. The day before, in fact, my lord, but close enough. Believe me, this is the last place I want to be. Inspector, let us hear it from you first. Explain the case to the court. Right you are, sir. The incident occurred at the Garrett household where the defendant has lodgings. In the ground floor of the room with the victim, Mr. William Shakespeare. The defendant already admitted to visiting the victim the night in question. Mr. Shakespeare had collapsed in his room as a result of poisoning by... Oh, he actually said what it was. By strychnine. He was found near all one morning when the landlord, suspecting something was wrong, broke down the door. This means, I presume, the door of the victim's room was locked at the time of the incident? Correct, my lord. It was locked from the inside, making entry or exit to the room impossible. Although the victim, Mr. Shakespeare, lives to tell the tale, he very nearly didn't. The man was halfway to heaven when we first found him. I was the first officer on the scene, my lord, and I have this photographic print here that I took at the time to show how it looked. Yes, a chilling scene indeed. This man looks very much deceased. That's right, everyone present believed that's exactly what he was. Very well. Very well, I shall accept this photographic print as evidence for the court. Now then, Mr. Natsume. Alright, I need to examine evidence. There's an opening in here. Oh, what is it, Mr. Naruhodo? This bar of soap. When we first found it, I could have sworn there was some sort of round disc in this depression just here. A reddish one. Yes, you're right. I remember it too. But now the depression's completely empty. Where could the disc have gone? Whoever opened this envelope didn't bother with a letter opener or scissors, did they? Yes, whoever opened it was clearly someone with an unrefined temperament, and judging from the angle of the rip here, the person in question must have been right-handed. Miss Suzato, I think perhaps someone's been reading too much of the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. You can never read too much of it, Mr. Naruhodo. Never! This must be the cup that Mr. Shakespeare is drinking from, then. It's stained on the inside. Tea does that, I'm afraid, even green tea. Oh, really? I've never noticed before. You've never noticed? Well, I never leave it in the cup long enough to leave a mark. I like to gulp it down. Drink tea while it's hot. That's the Japanese way, isn't it? Oh dear, so many people seem to have the wrong idea about our culture. Most of them are Japanese. Okay, that's a good one. This is the teacup from which Mr. Natsume was drinking. Yeah, unlike the other one, the inside of this cup is completely clean. I suppose he must have drunk the contents before the tea had a chance to leave a mark. I always gulp it down too. Sorry, Mr. Naruhodo? Well, if you just sip it little by little, it goes cold. Clearly, I shall have to instruct you on the proper way to make tea. Yeah, this time I don't want to miss anything like I did in the last case. That was just embarrassing. Doesn't look like there is this time, though. Nearby street map. Yeah, this is from the previous case. Second-hand book receipt. Yeah, that was evidence in the last case as well. Now then, Mr. Natsume. Yes. As the defendant, do you have anything to say at this juncture? They're haunted. Haunted by evil spirits. Good gracious, what's haunted? My lodgings. There's been a whole series of strange happenings at my lodgings. 10 before me died in mysterious circumstances. One was stabbed by no one on the street outside. My neighbor was poisoned. And me? What about me? I've nearly been killed countless times. Killed Mr. Natsume? How? Even that fateful night it happened. When I returned from Mr. Shakespeare's room, I lit my gas stove and climbed into bed. Before long, the stove went out and somebody tried to kill me. You must always extinguish all fires before retiring for the night, Mr. Natsume. But it's so cold. My runny nose would freeze. The point is I didn't poison my neighbor. Why am I being accused of this yet again? Why is my existence so cursed? Alright, thank you, witnesses. I believe I have a reasonably clear picture of events. If I could raise one more point, my lord. One more conclusive point. Conclusive? Go on. Fortunately, the victim, Mr. Shakespeare, has regained consciousness after his ordeal, and he has named the true culprit. The poison consumed by the victim was administered in a cup of tea that he drank the night in question. Tea, my lord, that was brought to the victim's room by the accused. Good grief. Order! Yes, that's the crux of this whole case. If Soseki-san is innocent, then why has the victim accused him? Well, Mr. Natsume, whatever you say of this accusation? That evening, yes, I did take some freshly brewed tea with me when I visited Mr. Shakespeare's room as a gift. The public water pump outside always freezes at night, so I bought bottled water especially to make it. This is the result. Never will I touch tea again, never. The public pump was frozen, you say? That's not information we've heard of before. That will do, thank you. Now, according to our laws, the defense must have the opportunity to cross-examine witnesses at least once. Therefore, I call upon these witnesses now for a formal testimony. I presume the prosecution has no objections. None whatsoever, my lord. Good, then you will give your account of the events on the night in question in the court now. Yes, my lord. The catastrophic night. It was around 9 o'clock in the evening when I visited my neighbor. I took some tea with me as a gift. We had a heated literary debate over a nice hot drink, after which I went back to my room around 11. Ah, my tea was completely harmless. He couldn't have locked the door behind me otherwise, could he? Strain takes some time to have effect on the body. People don't keel over immediately after taking it. The victim would have been perfectly able to lock the door after his guest left. The argument still stands. I imagine I'm going to have to counter something from the inspector's testimony. Yes, I see. It all seems relatively straightforward. Excuse me, but that testimony does raise one rather crucial point, I think. Mr Natsume claims his tea to have been harmless. Presumably, though, teacups have been examined for traces of the poison, haven't they? Why didn't I think of that? Well, as it happens, no. We haven't been able to. Did I hear you correctly, Inspector? The Scotland Yard has failed to examine the suspect's substance? How could you have overlooked something so important? Isn't that the first thing you should have done? My learned friend is falsely incensed. The inspector said the Scotland Yard was unable to examine the tea, not that it was overlooked. Unable? What do you mean? It's simple enough. There was none left. Not a drop. Someone must have been very thirsty indeed. With current scientific techniques, it is not possible to test for poison under such circumstances. We only need a drop, but that one drop does have to actually exist, funny enough. The lack of examination notwithstanding, it appears nothing other than tea passed the victim's lips on the night in question. See, thank you. The matter is clear. Cast your eyes over the jury, my learned friend. You can see it in their faces, I'm sure, the recognition of the accused's guilt. Your client's fate is all but sealed. In mere moments from now, you will lose, and your compatriot will be damned for eternity. He's right, I can feel all 6 of the jurors looking daggers at me. But I can't let them beat me down. I won't. Counsel for the defense, proceed with the cross-examination. Yes, my lord. Cross-examination. The catastrophic night. It was around 9 o'clock the evening when I visited my neighbor. I took some tea with me as a gift.
Hold it!
We're just gonna press everything as per usual. Alright, were you and your neighbors good friends then? Ah, no, we weren't friends. Not at all. Not at all. Never ever. A simple no would suffice. Then why did you decide to pay him a visit? Mr. Shakespeare fancies himself as having great literary knowledge. As a fellow scholar of English literature, we find much to talk about together. Calm down. No Japanese could understand the finer points of English literature. And on the night in question, that was the topic of conversation as well, I presume. It was the day of my last trial when I was acquitted. I just arrived back at my lodgings when I ran to Mr. Shakespeare outside on the street. I was around 6 o'clock. We exchanged 1 or 2 pleasantries, but it soon turned to a heated discussion. He was on his way out of the time, though, so I promised to visit his room at 9 to continue our debate. But I did have no ill intentions. Not one, not two, not any, not at all. Never, ever. A simple no would have sufficed, I feel. Then tell the court what indeed happened when you visited the victim's room. We had a heated literary debate over a nice hot drink, after which I went back to my room at around 11. A literary debate about Shakespeare's work, I think you said, didn't you? Shakespeare, very worthy topic of conversation, I must say. Oh, yes, my lord. Romeo and Juliet, who is stronger? There's a profound, pleasurable parley. Yes, even in old ancient Britain, even in ye olde Britain times, they had power scaling discussions, apparently. Romeo and Juliet? Who was stronger? I know I'm gonna regret asking this, but how did the debate go? Well, we both agreed we'd reach a conclusion more quickly with a reenactment. We got out in a Roman style, naturally. What? Mr. Shakespeare had all sorts of costumes in room for just such a contest. So when you say a reenactment, you mean you were actually in costume. He as Romeo and I as Juliet. After a vigorous wild tussle... Hey, wait a minute. If they're reenacting the end of Romeo and Juliet, well, spoilers for Romeo and Juliet, but... that might explain what happened, because... Romeo at the end ends up poisoning himself once he thinks Juliet's dead. After Juliet finds out that he poisoned himself when he couldn't live without her, she decides to kill herself as well so they can at least be together in death. And if he's Romeo, then did he poison himself because he was just that big into the role? Normally I'd say that's a bit too out there, but given how these games go, that is 100% a possible thing. I, as Juliet, came out on top. A victory I'll cherish forever. I dare not imagine the terrible scene of carnage. The fact remains that it was you who prepared the tea and took it to the victim, correct? I boiled the water in my room and made a pot to take with me. I'd heard he was too poor to have a tea himself, you see. And it is true, there was no sign of any tea leaves in the man's room. I wanted you something nice, to be friendly. So why does everyone look at me with suspicion? My tea was harmless, of course it was. And do you have any basis for that statement, witness? Ah, my tea was completely harmless. You couldn't have locked the door behind me, could you?
Hold it!
Was good? Yeah, there's not a drop of tea left in the victim's room anywhere, was there? That's correct. Anyone who would think the fellow had never had a pot of tea before, he must have licked it dry. Which is a pity, because one drop is all we would have needed to analyze it for poison. And you say you returned home to your room at 11 o'clock, Mr. Natsume? Yes, definitely, by heaven earth I swear it. Landlord was able to verify that, as it happens. He confirmed the defendant back in his room at 11 that night. And how was landlord able to attest to this? He, said it was the lamps, I believe. Well, lamps, Inspector? When tenants return to their rooms and start using the gas, lamps in other parts of the house flicker. Yes, Mr. Garrett seems to pay a lot of attention to the comings and goings of his tenants. There's only one key to Mr. Shakespeare's room, I know that for certain. So he must have locked the door himself, from inside. The victim has confirmed that to be the case, yes. So I'm right, my tea was harmless, completely harmless. If you take the poison, you die. Everyone knows that. It's not that simple, I'm afraid. What do you mean? Strychnine takes some time to have an effect on the body. People don't keel over immediately after taking it. How long does it take for symptoms to appear, then? According to the coroner, I was speaking to at the yard about 30 minutes after the poison's consumed. When the victim suffers violent convulsions, cramping, stiffness, eventually dies of asphyxiation. So there's a 30-minute interval between when it's ingested and the onset of symptoms. There seem to be a lot of different types of poison in the world, that's for sure. Oh dear, death by poisoning again. It's always so awful. 30 minutes is a very long time. Certainly long enough for the victim to have locked the door behind the accused after he left. Can't deny that. And it further degrades Soseki-san's alibi. I have the medical report from the doctor who examined the victim here, my lord. It spells it out, really. The accused is the only person who could have possibly done it. Very well, the court will add this report to the court record as evidence. Oh, yes, I see it here. A delayed onset of symptoms. Hooray. Let's take a look at it while we're here. William Shakespeare, 31. Ingestion of small quantity. Toxic effects present 30 minutes after ingestion. Highly likelihood of the substance having been mixed with the tea the victim was drinking, but no sample could be obtained for testing. Poisoning incident occurred at 1:30 a.m. Ooh! But he said... Assessed from the victim, pocket watch appears broken when the man collapsed. No container for the poison was found at the scene. Okay, this is the contradiction here, because if the poison occurred around 1:30, but we corroborated that the accused was in his apartment at 11, and 30 minutes after 11 is not 1:30. That's 2 hours later, in fact. Over 2 hours later, I should say. The victim would have been perfectly able to lock the door after his guests left. The argument still stands. The argument still stands, you say? That's what Mr. Natsume has been saying, isn't it? A pair of them drank tea together that night, so if there was poison in it, the victim couldn't have been able to lock the door the accused left later on. Exactly. Ah, me and my tea are innocent. Sweet innocent, I tell you. I'm afraid, sir, that doesn't follow. You see, this is a slow-acting poison. In other words, it takes time for the symptoms to appear. So you could have left the room up to 30 minutes after the victim drank the tea. As long as you did that, Mr. Shakespeare will lock the door after you've done. Oh, but no, we drank the tea straight away. Battle over whether Romeo and Juliet was stronger, that came after the tea. Do you have any evidence to support that statement? In my great homeland, the Empire of Japan, we have a saying, drink tea while it's hot. Sure, a proverb will satisfy the prosecution. I'm afraid there's no conclusive proof to support the defendant's assertion. On the contrary, there are still sufficient grounds to infer his guilt in this matter. Oh no. Alright, so that's the extent of their testimony, is it? If I could voice a personal opinion, Mr. Naruhodo, of course, go ahead. Mr. Natsume is arguing for his innocence so adamantly and persistently, yet Inspector Gregson brushes what he says aside. It's really quite infuriating. I agree, so we need to find an inconsistency in what the inspector is saying, I think. I'm afraid so. As things stand, the jurors are sure to find Mr. Natsume guilty. And as I see it, we need to focus on the poison in the tea. Let's listen carefully to testimony again. Yeah, I need to use the autopsy report on... Let's see. People don't... Doesn't take some time immediately. Alright, I need to do it on one of these two. Yeah, it says here the poison was at 1:30, but the time... Alright, let's go with this one.
Objection!
Yeah, I figured this was it, since he said the argument. Well, the argument still stands, you say? I think not, Inspector. Come again. I think you'll find that you've overlooked a very significant chronological inconsistency here. A chrono what? What are you on about? Well, according to this report, the victim must have consumed the poison at around 1:30 in the morning, and yet, the defendant, Mr. Natsume, left the victim's room at 11. Ah. Yes, that's right. There's more than 2 hours of missing time there. In other words, if there was poison in the tea that Mr. Natsume brought the victim's room, how could the victim have fallen ill to it 2.5 full hours after the defendant left? What? They're both going nuts. The defense's argument is entirely reasonable. How do you respond, Lord Van Zykes? I'm surprised he could drink something after all this poison hidden in alcohol. Well, tea's not alcoholic, but it could be in his, I guess. For all he knew it. But I'd forgive the discourtesy if my mind had wandered. I was considering what cuisine would be best complement the contents of my hallowed chalice this luncheon. How it could have happened, you ask? I do hate to shatter illusions, but my friend here appears to be chasing a phantom idea. A phantom? It's so hard to imagine the victim drank his tea after the accusers left. For example, the time stated in the medical report. Yes, at around 1:30.
Objection!
Mr. Natsume brought the tea with him to drink together with his neighbor. In Japan, there's a well-known saying, drink tea while it's hot. Objection. And in my country, there's an even more apt saying, there's nothing more refreshing than cold tea. The point is, if there was such a long gap, there may be other ways to explain the victim could be poisoned and other possibilities. What sort of possibilities, counsel? Well, for example, the man could have had another visitor. Another visitor? That's a very bold assertion, my learned friend, from someone who has nothing to substantiate it. Or the victim could have taken the poison of his own volition. You suggest this may have been a self-deletion.
Objection!
Mr. Shakespeare has categorically denied that. The idea can and must be discounted. Oh, but he could be lying. To save himself from what, though? Is something wrong, Lord Van Zykes? I was listening to the sound of the carriage pulling up outside the courtroom. Pray forgive the discourtesy. Carriage? What carriage? It would seem that the key player in this case has just arrived. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets upon his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sounds and fury, signifying nothing. Who, sir, are you? William Shakespeare, my lord. Alas, 'twas I, undone by these bitter events. I am the victim. What? What's he doing here? I was hoping we'd hear from him eventually. Why is he accusing someone that didn't poison? The prosecution seeks to call this gentleman to the stand. With his testimony, my learned friend's futile resistance will be utterly crushed. You're calling him as a witness? Very well, counsel. I grant your request with interest. I'm curious to discover what the court shall hear from the victim himself. Happy am I, Shakespeare, to regale thee with my tale of woe, my lord. Oh, but I still have my own tale to tell, my own tale of worse woe. I can regale the court with the tale of my perfect innocence in perfect English. That will do, Mr. Natsume. Let's hear the court. Let's now hear from the victim. Alright. So that's Mr. Shakespeare, but who's that other man beside him? Yes, I feel sure we've caught a glimpse of that man before. State your names and occupations of the court, please, witnesses. A writer of words so sweet, they do scent the breeze. An inventor of ideas so profound, they compose the earth. The unrivaled poet, an unmatched scribe, William Shakespeare. Were the great bard to be recalled to life anew? Lo, what a magnificent man. Good fellows, I am he who ponders such a miracle. William Shakespeare. Oh, name's Matterman. Adron B. Matterman. I need to get a drink here. No, I'm really thirsty. Just regular water tonight, no soda or anything special. Alright, there we are. I work for the Altamont Gas Company, East End branch office. Ah, I remember now. It was yesterday on Briar Road. Oh yeah, she's right, it's him. Oh, what's this? It looks like he's trying to see into Soseki-san's lodgings. Is something wrong, Mr. Naruhodo? Excuse me, could we have a word, sir? Yes, we spotted him outside Mr. Gyardob's house. He's a gas company employee? What does he have to do with this case? So, Mr. William Shakespeare, you are the victim in this miserable affair, correct? Oh heaven, oh hell, do you command me to remember? That sweet poison didst cross me and cross mine innocent lips. I had subpoenaed him for the trial, with his doctor's permission, naturally. Hearing the testimony of the aggrieved will remove any room for doubt in the jurors' minds, I am sure. Behold, you have only to rearrange letters of my name to see that me is a seraph, an angel indeed. Thus I must be of noble mind, sweet nature, and verily honest of heart, as all heavenly angels must be. Because there isn't a less contrived meaning in your name. No, not at all. The jurors seem to be very moved by this man, I'm afraid. They're all actually taking his seraphanagram idea seriously. Thank you, witness, for your illuminating introductions. But my lord, what's the man next to Mr. Shakespeare doing here? The gas man, I mean. What, me? Well now, allow me to enlighten my learned friend. You recall, I presume, your earlier impertinence? When you suggest the victim had another visitor to his room that night in question. Moreover, the victim is a compulsive liar. No, I didn't quite say that, but this young chin stroke it is to controvert your wild claims conclusively. Is that not so, Mr. Meterman? Hang on, no, I'm just here. I hereby call for your formal testimonies. You will tell the court as lucidly as possible what happened the night in question. One may smile and be a villain. Yes, it doth pain me, but let the truth be spoken. The truth of that wintry night of my discontent. Witness testimony. The wintry night of my discontent. A snow lay about. My neighbor did cometh that evening, bearing a gift of tea. His mouth movements feel a little weird, but then again, a bunch of the characters seem to have a bit of weird mouth movements with some of their standing poses. But merry bitter was his drink, and when he left, I did fall upon my table. 'Twas the tea alone did pass my lips that late hour, naught else. I was outside this bloke's window in the freezing cold all night, keeping an eye on his room. No one else visited his room but that short little round, the back eastern fella. Wait, what did you say? You were keeping an eye on Mr. Shakespeare's room all night? That's right, of course, the bloke's window's all blocked up, isn't it? Okay, I was gonna say, it's really odd to suggest he was keeping an eye on the window when it's all open. There's a little gap in the bricks where you can see in the room. Just spent the night trying to keep my teeth from chattering as I peered through that. The question is, sir, why? Well, now that's because he's on my list. What a piece of work is a man, wherefore whilst I'll stare in wonderment. What are you talking about? This buzzing busybody hath not part in this play. I pray thee, pay him no heed, pay him nor ado than about his tedious words. He does look like a bee, yeah. That's what I noticed before. Yes, I was correct before. His bags do look like a bee's abdomen. What'd you say about me? Calm yourself. This court is concerned with what happened on the night in question, nothing more. Indeed, that is so. And as the testimony we just clearly heard reveals, there was no one other than the accused present at the time who could have carried out the crime. Well, I believe this may be the final testimony of the trial. Now, counsel, the defense may proceed with cross-examination. Yes, my lord. Cross-examination. The wintry night. Snow lay about my neighborhood. Hold it! Alright, so to be clear, by neighbor, you are referring to the defendant, Mr. Natsume. Oh, indeed, sire. Perchance thou wilt call him the man from upstairs. And at what time did the mustachio man visit your room? Our meeting was promised for the hour of 9, and lo did he come, to give a fragrant tea. Details of which are in accordance with the defendant's own testimony, yes. And we were broiled with such literary debate as history hath not seen before. By which I presume he means the discussion was about who is stronger, Romeo or Juliet. Shakespeare did play the part of young Romeo, whilst my neighbour did play the fair Juliet. Each was dressed as our characters be to bring about the weight upon our merry experiment. I dare not imagine the scene. Frailty. Thy name is woman. Canst thou imagine thy dispenser was? Yes, I'd heard of the Eastern art of jujutsu, but neither did I dream 'twould be a skill practiced by the comely maiden. Juliet meet Romeo up? This is not helping our case. I believe the court has heard enough about your earth-shattering literary debate. Perhaps you could restate your statement about the tea that was brought to your room. My liege, I am thy servant. Gladly I would do thy bidding. But merry bitter was the drink, and when he left I did fall upon my table. Let me stop you there. Mr. Natsume left your room at 11 o'clock, but it wasn't until after 2 the poison made you collapse. That amounts to more than 3 hours of missing time. If the defendant really put the poison to your tea, that 3-hour window of time is something you're gonna have to explain. Oh, gladly. 'Tis an easy task. What? I did drink of the tea, not while my guest tarried, but after he took leave of me. Ah, faith was stone cold, but at 1 hour past midnight, Barely were my lips parched. That doesn't sound normal. Nah, just quite ordinary, sire, after all. Thou wouldst recall our finery debate. Amid such argument, there'd be no time for fiery tea. Romeo and Juliet again. And their power-scaling debate. Mr. Shakespeare in some... And once again, he sounds less vampire and more Russian. I need to go vampire for this. Oh, good evening, Mr. Shakespeare. In summary, allow me to confirm. You did not come here with the intention of naming your attacker. But of course, my liege. Was the stooped lover of words attempt to shuffle me off this mortal coil? And we all know what that means. 'Twas the tea alone did pass my lips that night, not else. So you didn't have any kind of evening meal, dinner, supper? Ha! Fie on luxury, fie on gluttony. To eat thrice a day is but a waste of time. I'm sorry. I would that my bear were full no more often the sum doth rise. Well, most heroic eating habits, I must say. Night and day I do fill my hours with learned study of great bard and playwright. Hence it is there that both doth night in my chamber be the costumes of thine art. That would appear to be the case, even as the rodent found starved death in your, as even a rodent was found starved death in your room. Now that I think about it, it's not just food that was conspicuously missing from that room, wasn't it? I don't recall seeing a single player script anywhere. For I have devoured them all. You've eaten them? Every word within my skull. Dost thou imagine otherwise? Right, that wasn't misleading at all. Now, could you turn around, please? Which brings us to the conclusion that the only way the poison could have passed the victim's lips is the tea. I was outside this broken window in the freezing cold all night, keeping an eye on his room. But the windows of that house have all been filled in. A historical artifact, the now defunct window text. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. They're all bricked up horribly. But as it happens, there's a little part of the brickwork at the bottom corner that's been opened up. I was looking through that gap. Yeah, there were a few bricks loose, weren't there? For some strange reason, a couple of bars of soap lined on the edge outside as well. I'm not going around poking my chin in other people's business, especially on the freezing cold nights. Them's my orders. That's what I do. Keep doing as long as there's breath in my body. What's with all the theatricals today? Out of interest, Mr. Meterman, after the accused had left and returned to his own lodgings, did you see the victim leave the room at all? Nope, he never left. It was in that room the whole time, as far as I'm concerned. And we can therefore discount the possibility of a self-deletion. How can you be so sure of that? The police carried out a thorough investigation of the scene and found no receptacle for the poison. And so we know the victim did not leave his room and hence did not dispose of the poison's container himself. It's clear that this was no attempt at something like that. Only the culprit could have removed the receptacle. Ah, yes, loosely explained, counsel, thank you. It really was, you can't argue with the logic. No one else visited his room but the...
Hold it!
Alright, so your short little round back to Eastern fella. So you can't be sure it was the defendant then?
Objection!
How many other shorts on the back with a mustache do you think there are in London? Japanese people, do you think there are in London? Well, of course, it's only near a gap, it's quite dark, so I didn't notice the mustache. He showed up around 9, so I'm pretty sure of myself. And when the person you saw arrived, did he and Mr. Shakespeare drink together? Nah, sorry, couldn't say. Why not? Because I couldn't see in the room all that well, could I? What I didn't see was a silhouette of that guy wearing a pretty dress. And the pair of them started some kind of wrestling match. I tell you, I didn't know what to make of it. I suppose that was the Romeo and Juliet championship battle going underway. Mr. Natsume, allow me to confirm one final time. Apart from the accused, can you state with certainty that no one else visited the victim on the night in question? No question. Gas man's honor. Who's holding it? Lord. Oh, goodness me. Yes, Mr. Foreman. I've kept my mouth shut and listened up till now, but this has gone long enough. Are you all with me? Yes. Are we to understand that you ladies and gentlemen of the jury are in agreement with one another? That you've reached a unanimous decision? Do right, we have. Are you all with me? Yes. Oh, wait, no. The defense is in the middle of cross-examination. To be honest, I was holding out a bit of hope for you, young man, especially after you did identify those few that followed the accused leaving the victim's room. Yes, the 3 missing hours, as you put it. But in the end, what difference do they make? None as far as I can see. And since that's now apparent, there's really no need to delay our decision any longer. Like I was saying before, if I don't take 5 Bob home with me tonight, the missus will blow her top. What's that? Sorry, I didn't quite catch what you said. Alright, very well, let the court be appraised of your decisions. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you'll state your leanings to the defendant's culpability.
Guilty. Guilty. Guilty.
Guilty. Guilty.
All of you. Well, it would appear the jury is indeed unanimous. So, this time at last, it seems justice will finally be done. All's well that ends well, as they can say. This calls for a toast, I feel. The guilty being punished. Ah. Don't get up, Mr. Naruhodo, please. The trial isn't over yet. What do you mean, Mr. Zato? What about the information I found in this Encyclopedia of British Law app? That obscure right that belongs to the defense in these situations. Remember? A Summation Examination. Yes, that's right. We don't have a jury in Japanese courts, of course, but here in British Court of Law, if we can reverse the decisions of the majority of the jurors, we can force the trial to continue. This trial can't end now. Whatever it takes, I just can't let that happen. The defense moves to invoke its right to a summation examination, my lord. Why am I not surprised at my learned friend's inability to admit defeat? You choose to cling desperately to some archaic rule you barely comprehend instead of accepting the truth. Certainly no other defense counsel in recent times has exercised the right to a summation examination, because they all know once the jury's mind is set, it cannot be altered. Nevertheless, the right remains and must be upheld. Defense counsel's request is granted. The court will now proceed with the summation examination as outlined in the Encyclopedia of British Law. Right, thank you, my lord. Are you and your fellows prepared, Mr. Foreman? Believe me, we all know all about this young lad's tenacity, and we're ready for it. Very well. In that case, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I hereby call upon each of you to state the grounds upon which you find the defendant guilty of the crime which he stands accused. Judicial findings. The jurors' contentions. The victim may not be well off, but he's a noble man and straight up. There's no reason to doubt the man. Well, dude, the good gentleman has no reason to lie. In fact, I think he does splendid. Just look at the accused by comparison. He's Japanese and has a mustache, very fishy. There's no evidence to suggest the gangling actor is a fraudsman, for now at least. I really don't care. I need this trial to end quickly. 3 hours. 3 hours of missing time is nothing when you reach my age, you know. Nothing at all. I knew it. Every single one of them seems completely convinced. It seemed that all the jurors have come to the conclusion that Mr. Shakespeare is fine, upstanding, and honest citizen. If you ask me, they've all been bewitched by his strange theatrical movements, and sadly, nothing Mr. Natsume said appears to have registered at all. Here goes. Let's not forget, I pleaded with the jury on Soseki-san's behalf before, and it worked. So you never know. Before we begin, it might be an idea for me to remind you exactly how a summation examination works, Mr. Naruto. Well, you're still new to British law, after all. That's true, I suppose. This Soseki-san's fate is entirely in my hands now, too. There's always a chance I might have forgotten some crucial detail. Perhaps I should hear her out. I wonder, should I let her talk me through it again? Or should I bother? No need. Thank you for the kind offer, Mrs. Otto, but I've been through plenty of these summation examinations already now. I think it's important we don't delay the start any longer than necessary. Of course, I understand, and I'm quite sure you're right. If you're confused by anything at any point, you can turn to me for advice whenever you like. I'll be here for you. Alright, the key to this is really listening carefully to each juror's statement, finding two that are contradictory, and pitting the corresponding jurors against one another. Without further ado, please, counsel, proceed with the summation examination. The defense's rebuttal. The victim may not be well off, but he's a noble man straight up. There's no reason to doubt him. Hold up. Well, there are plenty of people in London who seem noble but poor. Couldn't some of them also be liars? Oh, I've no doubt about it. Like that shaky line of yours, for example. Oh, come on, Mr. Natsume is no liar. Look, the point is, the only thing that's passed the victim's lips that night was the Japanese man's tea. If we take the gas man's testimony into account as well, the truth couldn't be any clearer. That's alarmingly logical. Let me be frank here, I'm a gentleman with a gentleman's value. Turns out the old Shakespearean chum is a rotten liar after all. I'll gladly change my decision about the defendant. And I'm sure my fellow gentlemen in the jury would do the same. Isn't that right? Well, yes, perhaps. I don't see it happening. What's that? Elderly gent on the end here, you know. Oh, you'll have to speak up. Look, I really don't care about all this nonsense. I just need this trial to be over. How many gentlemen do we actually have on the jury, then? Alright, sir, may I hold you that? Don't forget what you said. Alright, if you can show me the victim's a liar, I'll reconsider my position.
Hold it!
Are you saying you believe the man to be trustworthy because he's rather splendid? No, that's not what I said. The point is, the man is the victim here. What reason would he have to lie? And yes, he is rather splendid. So you say, yet again. Meanwhile, the man who stands accused behaves suspiciously. It's exhausting to look at him. I'm afraid he's not splendid at all. Splendid logic there, ma'am. Thank you so much. Just look at the accused.
Hold it!
No, not one of those things, reason to find a man guilty. But he is fishy, there's no point in dancing around that fact. He's Japanese and he has a mustache and he stoops. You see, that we arrive at the conclusion in just 3 steps. 3 steps like a waltz, in fact. You know, the more I think about it, the more this trial seems like a dance. You seem to be several steps ahead of yourself, though. And you're on the wrong foot to begin with. No, I mean, there's nothing but circumstantial evidence here. Or, there's no direct proof of the victim's guilt. But the victim's version of events is backed up by what that big-chinned man says next to him, right? I mean, 1, he saw the Japanese man there. 2, he saw no one else. And 3, he saw the Japanese man there. Oh, well, there is 3 steps. Also, he does seem more and more like a waltz, doesn't it? Right. And the prosecution will waltz its way to victory if I let you speak much more. There's no evidence. Just the gangling actor is a fraudsman, for now at least.
Hold it!
A fraudsman? What do you mean by that exactly, ma'am? It really is a most tiresome problem for the company. Most irritating. We can absolutely be certain that a customer is stealing from us, but without hard evidence, we can't even threaten to take action for fear of being sued. I'm sorry, you've lost me a little there. Who are you exactly? I'm the wife of Augustus Altamont, owner of the Altamont Gas Company. Good gracious! Altamont Gas, you say? Gas is the future of energy in this country and around the globe, but proper handling is essential. As I'm sure our employee from the East End branch office will be first to agree. Absolutely, Lord Quimby. Gotta be used properly. Altamont Gas is the best in the world. Oh, that's why he was keeping tabs on that, because there was under suspicion he was stealing gas. I think we may have solved the mystery of the bow from earlier. So, right. He bowed in deference to his employer's wife, did he? So would I be right in assuming the reason Mr. Minimo was watching Mr. Shakespeare up in his room? I'm afraid there's no end to the lengths the population of the East End will go in order to steal our gas, so I have no choice when the company identifies someone as a possible fraudsman, but dispatch a worker to watch the suspect day and night. We're very thorough in our investigations. So what you mean, Mr. Shakespeare, is I wouldn't come out and say it in public, but you can finish that sentence with grubby little gas thief. You have noticed the public gallery in here, have you? The eye of man hath not heard, the ear of man hath not seen. Faith, wouldst thou wound me with thy words, were I to let them penetrate my skin? But seraphs hear not insults, only choirs of angels in song. We may not have evidence yet, but mark my words, my workers won't stop buzzing around you until they find it. And when they do, you'll find yourself blasted back to your angelic heights in an untold gas explosion. So Mr. Shakespeare has been stealing gas. I wonder, juror number 4, if you wouldn't mind adding that information to your statement, please? My pleasure. The bit about the ripping that thief apart in half you enjoyed. A little before the part about abject violence, if it's not too much trouble. Yes, of course. This could be it. This could shift the balance. Logan puts on a fine performance. In reality, he's a common thief, my company's gas. I don't care. This trial to end quickly. You keep talking about need to take home some money. What's that all about, sir? Oh, finish last. That's what about. What's that? I'm talking about the Derby at Hyde Park, aren't I? It was a Queen's Cup last week, wasn't it? Derby? It was a dead cert. That's the thing I couldn't lose, so I took my wife's secret savings. But then that hopeless soul went and did the unthinkable. Oh, if finish last was the name of the race horse. Oh dear, I think it's clear what happened, didn't he? This is the day the missus uses her savings for a trip down to the pub. So come on, let the business slide now. Just give it up. No, that's not gonna happen. 3 hours of missing time means nothing when you're my age. What do you really mean by that, sir? Well, I'm not one to boast, but I get up at 5 every morning, I do. At 5? You're a really early riser then, aren't you? What's that now? I said you're an early riser. Oh, well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I like to while away the hours in the evening reading books as well. By about 2 in the morning, I'm usually too tired to go on. He sleeps at 2 in the morning and gets up at 5. Oh my, that means he only has 3 hours of sleep each night. What's that, dear? Only 3 hours of sleep each night. That's right, you see. 3 hours of missing time. Like I said, it's not much, is it? This really isn't helping. The key to the Summation Examination is identifying contradictions between the jurors' statements, Mr. Naruhodo. Right, and once I've found 2 jurors whose statements can't coexist, I need to pit those against each other. Then hopefully when they see that what they're saying doesn't make sense, they'll change their leaning. Yes, and if you're able to change the minds of the majority, so at least 4 out of the 6, the trial will continue. But conversely, if you're unable to do that, the judge declares the trial over and moves to adjudication. I can't let that happen. Somehow or other, we have to turn this trial around.
Objection!
Alright, here we are. These 2 statements clearly contradict each other. Good gracious! 2 statements before counsel. Juror number 1. What are you yelling about, lad? I presume you've heard juror number 4's statement, made by the wife of the owner of the Altamont gas. Well, yes. So the victim, who you claim to be a noble, straight-up man, in fact, turns out to be a common thief. So the Galay says, but there is no evidence, is there? You and I both heard them say as much. It's true, we don't have evidence as such, just yet. But the claims aren't baseless, you know. What? You heard me. Saying as how his operation has already been compromised. I would suggest the court hear testimony from our East End branch officer employee over there. I'll do whatever you say, milady. Gasman's honor. Juror number 1, you say you're a man of your word. If I could show that Mr. Shakespeare was a liar, you assured me you would reconsider your decision about the defendant's guilt. Yes, I did say that. As a man of honor, I will hold to it. And I'm sure the other gentlemen of the jury will. Me? Well, yeah, now that we've found out the man's a liar, perhaps we ought to consider the matter further. Well, if I'm perfectly honest, I haven't heard half of what you've all been saying. This means you'll recap a few points. That would suit me down the ground. Oh no, I'm not having any part of this. I want the trial done and over with. Well, in that case, I shall change my leaning. So, Mr. William Shakespeare, if that's even your real name, we of the jury demand to know exactly what kind of man you really are. That's 4 jurors. 4 for not guilty. Yes, Mr. Naruhodo. Victory. Well, a small victory, but an important step. Order, order! Well, this is quite extraordinary, I must say. As a result of the defense's summation examination, the jury's leaning has changed. Now only 2 say guilty, whilst 4 say not guilty. I therefore declare this court to be in a state of disaccord, and order the trial to continue. The prosecution's not allowed to speak during a summation examination, so he can't poke any potential holes in the whole thing. You'd have spoiled the banquet, Mr. Shakespeare. The ladies and gentlemen of the jury now find they are unable to trust you, the victim. But you gods will give us. Some faults make us men. So God mend me, I do swear. The gasman speaketh which it concerns the most, not with gas, not with thin air. Aye, it burneth bright a while, but it hath no substance, and doth reek foul. Oh, what'd you just say? Do I take it, Mr. Shakespeare, that you deny the allegation of gas thievery? Oh, most heartily, my lord. Hast thou forgot? I am a seraph, an angel, noble of mind, sweet of nature, and verily, honest of heart. Ah, you flowery-mouthed, pompous beanhole, just 'cause I haven't got the evidence yet. Mr. Shakespeare, if, in fact, you are not noble of mind, sweet of nature, and honest of heart, if you are a liar, then your testimony should have no sway in this courtroom. We may not know why he's lying and implicating the defendant, but it does seem that he is indeed not a very honest person. In fact, maybe he's even racist like Von Zykes. And we have learned from the last game that if Von Zykes has to choose between his racism and the truth, he will choose the truth. My throat's dry. Let me get a drink here. It is my considered opinion that at the present time, no other possible culprit of the crime has been identified. All testimony heard by the court so far heavily implicates the defendant. In short, it would not be unreasonable for at this stage for me to rule on the case. Oh no. However, in light of the fact the jury has expressed concern about the fidelity of this witness, I believe it would be inappropriate for this court not to pursue this point further. I assure you, my lord, that it would be a waste of the court's time. The gas in this case are completely unrelated. Juror number 4? Yes. Didn't you say before that although you had no hard evidence to prove this man has been stealing gas, you have a strong grounds for suspecting him? That's right, we do. Don't we, worker? Absolutely, Lady Quimby. Gasman's honor. Very well then, we will hear your testimony now. You will tell the court precisely why you believe the victim, Mr. William Shakespeare, has been stealing gas. Yes, my lord, it'll be my pleasure. And all the Altamont gas name, I swear, if I may, my lord. Go ahead, madam. This worker's testimony may have a significant bearing on the good name of my husband's company. Therefore, I should like to take the stand alongside him. Supervisor role, if you wouldn't mind. Oh yeah, sweet as honey. Yeah. Very well, in an exception, I shall grant honor your request. Thank you, my lord. Wait as well, the boss gives you an earful. Ooh, it's gonna sting, mark my words. Alright, you will both testify before the court on the subject of the illegal consumption of the Altamont Gas Company's fuel. Yes, is that clear, my good man? Clear as Altamont gas, my lady. Which is the clearest in the world. Do you think the gas has gone to his head, Miss Susato? I think the man is just a very dedicated employee, Mr. Naruhodo. Witness testimony. The Altamont Gas Company's investigation. I'm proud to be the company's East End branch investigator and meter money collection agent. Altamont gas meters accept 3 penny bits, each giving customers about 2 hours of gorgeous gas. And yet, the meter in Mr. Shakespeare's room didn't have a single coin in it! The meter doesn't appear to have been tampered with, though, and the collection agent has the only key. Somehow, he's using all the flaming gas he wants, not paying a penny. If that's not thieving, what is? Pray forgive the discourtesy. The irreverence of this testimony caused me to turn to my hollowed chalice. What do you mean by that remark, Lord Von Zykes? Did the mustachio Japanese person poison the gangling excuse for an actor, or didn't he? That is all that should concern this court. And yet now we must listen to this abhorrence. Clearly what separates the vast British Empire and your Eastern Island nation is more than geographical distance. But this could turn out to be crucial testimony. The cross-examination must go ahead. Ow, my face! Do what you will. Lord Van Zykes appears to be in a violent mood. Yeah, he does. An attempted poisoning, and an incident of gas theft with no supporting evidence. It's true they wouldn't appear completely unrelated at first glance, but I wonder. The truth tends to be buried in the most unusual of places, and the first step of uncovering it would be to establish just who and what this man really is. Cross-examination. The Altamont Gas Company's investigation. I'm proud to be the company's East End branch investigator, a meter money collection agent. The Altamont. Alright, let's go. We'll just press on everything as per usual. Alright, so does that mean you enter people's houses in order to empty their gas meters? That I do. I have to try and catch people when they're in. Then I ask permission to come inside and do my business. Does that mean you've been into Mr. Natsume's room before, as well as that of Mr. Shakespeare? Well, now, interesting you should bring that up, because I couldn't believe how little money was in his meter. I mean, how the pair of them survived the winters beyond me, it really is. Knowing Mr. Natsume, he probably spends all of his gas money on books. And then when he's finished reading them, he probably burns them for warmth. You will kindly reiterate your statement about the gas meters themselves, Mr. Meterman. How much to say really, but as you wish. They accept 3 penny bits, each coin giving customers about 2 hours of gorgeous gas. Alright, so all London houses that have gas supply are fitted with these gas meters, are they? They're the latest model, the height of technology developed by our company, Altamont Gas. And anyone who uses our gas will have to use one of these meters in their property, yes. So if a 3-pence coin gives about 2 hours of gas, most people will use about 3 coins in a night. And a bit more than that usually, if they have both gas lights and a gas stove, that is. Thinking about it, Sasaki doesn't have a fireplace in that room of his, does he? Some people still choose to use candles, of course, and only have gas for heating. Ah yes, I do remember seeing candles in Mr. Natsume's room, actually. And how does the money in the meter get back to the gas company? Every 3 days, gasmen like me visit properties on the gas supply and empty the meter of coins. I must say, the design and manufacture of the new meter cost the company an awful lot of money. But happily, it did put a stop to people not paying their dues, for the most part. Ah, because they have to pay in advance, you mean? Yes, exactly right. Well, I'll have to give them points for creative thinking. And yet the meter in Mr. Shakespeare's room didn't have a single coin in it. So out of interest, how long has this been going on? Weeks and weeks, you've been pinching gas off us for ages. And you've examined the meter in Mr. Shakespeare's room, I take it? Naturally, we took it off the wall and went over it with a fine-tooth comb. And found nothing suspicious at all, I presume. No, I'm afraid we didn't. Which is exactly why I demand a new type of meter to be produced. One with an indestructible lock, the Shakespeare special. That sounds like it would have cost an awful lot of 3-penny pieces. But even after all that, the rascal's meter was still empty. I'll never forget the humiliation. When I opened my money box and found a bear. You what? I said, you what? And look on his face, that smarmy smile of his. I pulled the meter straight off the wall and took it back to the office. But you know what? Nothing. Not a trace of it being jimmied open anywhere. Not a single sign. And what's happened to my salary as a result? Down by 3 shillings a day, that's what. A life-threatening situation in a number of ways. Incidentally, what became of that meter? Oh, another mechanic. I still got it. Oh. Right here. No wonder they call you Meter Man. I think it would be prudent for the court to sequester this item in the trial as the trial is ongoing. Definitely. Although at first glance, there doesn't appear to be anything unusual about it. Now let's give this a good look over. It's a very sturdy looking padlock, isn't it? And the money box is sealed with beeswax too. So if Mr. Sholmes were to get up any mischief, he'd be found out immediately. Mr. Naruhodo, mischief of that kind is not the sort of thing that Mr. Sholmes would do. You know, you didn't finish. She just said Mr. Sholmes would. You know, you didn't finish that sentence, would you? Well, anyway, it's understandable the gas company would want to safeguard the money. It's rightfully theirs. But it does feel a little over the top, perhaps, doesn't it? Remember, we have to look over this hole. Oh, here we go. Oh, what's this? Have you spotted something, Mr. Naruhodo? Here, there's a little hole. Do you see? Goodness, you're right. I wouldn't have noticed. It's not a very neat hole, is it? Not professionally made, I'd say. So you think it might have been opened up by Mr. Shakespeare? Possibly. It seems the people at Altamont Gas must have missed it. Well, it certainly seems to go all the way through the inside. Yeah, but there's no way a coin could fit through there, so... Okay, so that... This proves the theory might have been shoving something through there. That's true, but even so, it seems more than a little suspicious. Maybe. They said there was a bronze coin in that, in this soap bar here. Yeah, the reddish medallion. Maybe he's putting counterfeit coins in there, and then they all melt through there, through the bottom. That would allow him to use it without having to worry about it. Let us move this along. Shall we continue with your testimony? I would say it has as much value as the contents of that meter. Ooh. The meter doesn't appear to have been tampered with, though, and the collection agent has the only key. So there's only one key for all of your meters. Well, in truth, there's another key in the company vault in our main office. But even if someone had managed to get their holds of it, even if someone had somehow managed to get a hold of the key, we'd know if the coin box has been opened. How is that? I came up with a rather clever way to expose any little shenanigans that happens. Would you care to explain? Well now, in order to empty meter, you have to unlock the padlock and remove the cover. But when I close the cover again, I stick a little beeswax seal on it, see? Seal, like the sort of thing you'd put on an envelope, you mean? Something like that, yeah. Basically, you can't remove the cover again without breaking the seal. Now, in the case of Mr. Shakespeare's meter, there are no coins inside at all, as I said. But the seal hadn't been broken either. So that would mean Mr. Shakespeare somehow managed to steal coins from inside the meter without opening it. It would seem so, but that would be impossible. Somehow he's using all the flaming gas he wants without paying a penny.
Hold it!
How do you know that he's been using gas, though? Well, now, since I started investigating this bloke, I've had to be in his room more than a few times. On every single occasion, his lamp's been blazing and his stove pounding. It's the middle of winter, and he still turns to me, sweat dripping down his cheeks, and says, "Get thee to a nunnery." Hamlet, indeed. I could wring the bloke's neck, get all hot under the collar, but still, every time I open that flaming meter, it's empty. He's robbing me of my salary, too. What's wrong with the world? Where's the justice? But how can Mr. Shakespeare possibly be stealing the money? understand. The simple explanation is right before her eyes. What? I toasted to her eventually realizing the gas man could be the accomplice. You what? Oh, goodness. Eminently plausible indeed. Well, what do you have to say for yourself? Oh, please, Lady Quimby, I'm a faithful worker. And besides, if the money us gasman collected doesn't tie with how much gas has been used, you dock our pay the same amount. So you'd be stealing money only to have the same amount taken from your wages. Clearly, that makes no sense. Perhaps it's a case of losing the battle to win the war? No, I'm gonna stir the hornet's nest. If I was stealing from the company, I'd be finished. It would seem there's no evidence to support the claims of thievery made against the victim, because Mr. William Shakespeare is innocent. Pray, forgive me if that shatters some illusion my learned friend is clearly under. I certainly didn't expect to uncover another crime that looks like it's been taking place in the very same room. According to the testimony, it's only the meter in Mr. Shakespeare's room that's under suspicion. It does seem as though perhaps it has nothing to do with the incident involving Mr. Natsume, though. I know it does seem that way, but the fact is, since I've been practicing law in England, I feel like I've encountered this at least once already. Cases that are interlinked. Right, when we first did the third case in the last game, it seemed like the domestic dispute we got caught up in was unrelated to the case, but it turned out to be everything. It might seem these two cases have nothing to do with one another at first, but in fact, they're intimately connected. Yes, we've experienced that before, haven't we? What if this is another instance? Perhaps, but we can't be sure of that yet. The Altamont Gas Company's been investigating Mr. Shakespeare so there must be something to it. But then, how is he managing to steal their gas? I think what I need to do is show off the meter itself, because that's a new piece of evidence I got from pressing. I just need to figure out which one of these I want to point it at, because this shows that something... Oh yeah. Since she says here the mirror doesn't appear to be tampered with, I want to use this. Because we now know it has been tampered with. Alright, Lady Altamont, I'm afraid to say... this meter clearly does show signs of having been tampered with. What? Get what? I've been over and over that thing. I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong with it. In that case, what do you have to say about the small hole made at the base of the coin box? Hole? What? Oh, you're right. You're quite right. There's a little hole there. The meters aren't supposed to have that. None of the others do. In other words, we can assume that Mr. Shakespeare secretly opened this hole himself. Yes, I wouldn't be all surprised, but why? Yeah, why? I mean, it's tiny. You couldn't get a farthing through that. Lady Altamont, I wonder if you could give the court some more details about your meter design. Certainly. What sort of details? Well, what I'd specifically like to know is, how it differentiates coins. After all, we seem to know he has oh yeah, that might be why the bars of soap were outside, because on the underneath of one was a coin, but it somehow vanished while we were out. So... he might be making fake coins that trick the machine somehow. What do you mean? Well, for example, if someone were to put in 1 penny coin, that wouldn't work presumably, would it? No, of course not. So how does the meter know that the coin it's been fed is a 3-penny bit? Oh, I see what you're getting at now. The meter tells coins apart by their shape and size, which includes their thickness. A 3-penny bit is about 3/4 of an inch in diameter, you see. Other coins just won't fit. Let's see. It's clearly been very well thought out. Witness will amend our full testimony with that information in case it is pertinent. As you wish, my lord. The meter is designed for coins the exact diameter and thickness of a 3-penny bit. Nothing else will fit. And we know the soap.
Objection!
Oops, this wasn't right. There are clearly grounds for being suspicious of that statement. I'm sorry, counsel, but I fail to see why. Well, you know, they're just playing devil's like. Yes, you do appear to have something of the devil in you, Mr. Howard. Says the man merrily dishing out penalties. I was a bit too quick that. I definitely want to press her there.
Hold it!
But conversely then, it would seem anything matching a 3-pence coin exactly in terms of diameter or thickness could equally be used. Would that be true? Well, yes, in a way. The weight comes into it to a certain extent as well. We've thought of that through, though, anyway. If finding fake coins inside the box when I empty the meter, the contract says the customer has to pay 100 times the amount he put in as a fine. We live for moments like that as gas men do. We live for them. It would seem the gas company has thought of everything. Whoa, hooray for the gas. Hurrah for cash. Okay, yeah, so now we know precisely how he was stealing gas. He was using the bars of soap to create fake medallions. They would melt through the bottom, and so there'd be nothing in there, or for them to, there'd be no counterfeits in there, because it would leak through the bottom. Remind me, how big are 3 penny bits? About 3/4 of an inch across. What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo? Is this 2 centimeter measure significant? Or perhaps there's some other aspect of the meter's construction we should be focusing on? Oh, look at that bar of soap. There's a circular depression on the side, about 2 centimeters across, or 3/4 of an inch. Ah, do you think? We did find the soap at the scene, didn't we? Yes. Yes, there were 2 bars on that little ledge outside the window, so we took this one. I'm sure when we first found it, there was some sort of reddish medallion in the middle of there. I remember it clearly. Yes, but there's no sign of it now. What could have gone? Okay, so I need to examine it after we learn this. Yeah, you may be right. Perhaps I should try a different tactic here. Like asking about whether the meter can dismantle, for example. Alright, how can the meter be dismantled? Dismantled? Yeah, given there are no signs of it having been forced. I'm wondering if perhaps rather than being broken open, it might have just been taken apart. Well, yes, that does make some sense. The padlocks are made by a first-class locksmith from the finest quality steel. And the meter box itself is made from plate steel as well, welded shut to ensure it can't be opened. I can assure you, it's quite impossible to dismantle it. Oh yeah, nothing leaks from the Altamont meter, no coins, no gas, no nothing. I see. Witness will amend our formal testimony with that information in case it's pertinent. As you wish, my lord. All joints in the meter welded shut and the lock is made from solid steel. There's no way to dismantle it.
Hold it!
Okay, so I can switch between these two. Has anyone ever tried? Oh yeah, they've tried, but they'll have given up before long. After all, if they actually broke the meter, the company would be able to take legal action. Yes, that does make sense. What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo? Is it welded steel construction significant? Or perhaps there's some other aspect of the meter's construction we should be focusing on? Yeah, you may be right. Perhaps I should try a different tactic here. Like about how the meter differentiates coins, for example. Alright, and yeah, we're resetting the same thing now. Okay, this is pretty neat. I basically get 2 choices of testimony, and I get to choose which one I feel would be a better idea. Or to present evidence to.
Objection!
There we go, we got what we needed. Alright, let me just confirm something here. If the diameter and thickness were to be correct, the meter would accept any object as if it were a threepenny bed. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct. Well then, by something of coincidence, while we were investigating Mr. Shakespeare's room, we found a particular item that matches the dimensions perfectly. Something the same size as a threepenny bit? What was it? The item in question is this. What? Have you been inhaling gas? It's a bar of soap. It certainly looks nothing like a threepenny bit, I must say. Looks like I'm gonna have to point out exactly what I mean here. What's so important about the soap is this part here.
Got it!
You have to turn over the soap to see what I mean. Ah, are you referring to that round depression in the middle of the soap there? That's right, a depression that's approximately 3/4 of an inch in diameter. Or in other words, almost exactly the same size as the threepenny bit. Cat why? Does anyone here present have in their possession of a threepenny bit? Quickly now, hand over your coins, ladies and gentlemen. It sounds rather like a highway robbery, doesn't it? Thanks to a kind member of the public in the gallery, I have here a threepenny bit. Now to see if it fits. My word, it couldn't be more snug. Yes, as I suspected. This, without a doubt, is a vital clue to explain how the gas company's being defrauded. Well, I don't believe it. Yeah, they got the B theme going. So your assertion amounts to what? That some inferior bar of soap has a tentative connection to the theft of gas? Yes. The depression in the soap was clearly made by a threepenny bit. I must concur, at least, that pushing a coin with some force into a poor quality bar of soap such as this is a remarkably simple way of replicating a coin's shape. And then you could use, well, some melted wax or something to pour in the mold. And you could make fake coins in no time. This brings all the pieces of this particular puzzle together. It's a method Mr. Shakespeare's been using to steal the gas. That's the missing link, and now if I follow the chain of thought, it's going to bring me to a new explanation for what happened that nobody's considered yet. But this is all nonsense. If the man's been making fake coins, my work here would have found them when he emptied the meter. But quite true, Lady Altamont. In the presence of some black magic that makes them disappear. Oh, I think Von Zykes knows. I see, that's what we're dealing with, is it? There's one form of black magic that could cause the fake coins to disappear into thin air, yes. Exactly. And the meter here gives it away. What on earth? There are remnants of the magical method used, visible on the gas meter taken from the victim's room. Without your assertion, counsel, the defense will identify these remains for the court. Where on the meter can the remnants of the method used to make fake coins disappear to be seen? Simple. They vanish through this coin hole. We found this bar of soap at the scene of the crime, just outside the victim's window. Outside? Yes, outside, where you yourself, Mr. Meademan, were loitering in the freezing winter air. That's where we found this soap. Oh, I get it. That's right. The answer, of course, is ice. Did you just say ice? Mr. Shakespeare had been leaving soaps like this outside his window each evening filled with water. After a night outside in the bitter cold, the water's completely frozen solid the next morning. Then he takes his fake coins of ice and feeds them to the gas meter, giving him light and warmth in spades. And his room becomes very comfortably warm, while the ice now inside heated the coin's meter's coin box melts, turning back into water and draining harmlessly away through the small hole made in the underside of the meter. That is how, without leaving any evidence of his wrongdoing, the man's been stealing Altamont gas. Just like that, so simply. Is he trying to make us look like idiots? He's been fooling us all this time with bars of soap and water. That's right, madam. I don't believe it. It can't be true. Do you have any idea how much money we spent to develop that new meter? Now you have the audacity to suggest a bit of soap and water could render it useless? I'm fairly sure I didn't design it. Evidence. Sorry. Oh, and evidence? You're going to stand there? The meters are rubbish. I want to see proof. She's very good at enforcing accountability, isn't she? Alright, very well, Lady Altamont. If you'd like evidence, I'll provide it. What? Mr. Naruhodo, are you saying you actually have evidence to support this theory? I did notice a trace of something that bothered me a little at the time. And I have a feeling this theory we've come up with now could explain it. A piece of evidence that substantiates the theory about how Mr. Shakespeare has been stealing gas. the teacups because there's no tearing Mr. Natsume's cup.
Take that!
We intend to use this evidence to convince the court of... Okay, I've got it wrong. Yes. That was my plan, my lord. Mr. Naruhodo, your eyes are darting around like little fish. Little fish, otherwise known as small fry. The small fry, I find, are quickly polished off. Have I just been devoured by the prosecution? If Mr. Shakespeare made coins out of ice, wouldn't there perhaps be some trace of that at the scene? In his room, I mean. At the scene, yes, that's true. Let me have another look at the court record. Oh, it's... Yeah, we can see the... Yeah, see, with the magnifying glass, we can see the water here. Okay, I was thinking too hard, as per usual. Alright, this is a photograph of the scene at the point when the victim was discovered, taken by Inspector Gregson, and it clearly shows the remnants of the crime carried out by Mr. Shakespeare. What remnants? Here you can see the gas meter on the wall in Mr. Shakespeare's room. Now, look closely at the floorboards directly underneath the meter. Oh, what is that? Some kind of grubby... What is that? Some kind of grubby stain? It's almost certainly the water stain resulting from the liquid that drained from the hole that made the meter. Oh! If one coin gives around 2 hours of gas usage, and the occupant was heating his room in all these waking hours, we can imagine he would have used around 10 of his fake coins each day. Melting ice inside the coin meter's box would have been dripping out almost constantly, leaving a stain on the floor. This is awful! And there's further evidence, too. Mr. Shakespeare slumped over his table, apparently having consumed the poison. And right there next to him is a bar of soap, broken in half. You're right. It would appear to me then, counsel, that the man was eating the soap, wasn't he? Pardon me for your disagreeing with your lordship, but certainly not. He didn't beat about in the bush there, did he? In truth, Mr. Shakespeare is found with a fork in his hand. A meal of soap sounds increasingly likely. What do you mean to say he was using that fork to... Yes. To extract a frozen coin from the bar of soap. But the bar broke in half. So perhaps it didn't go over well. Good gracious! Ow, my face! Lord Van Zykes. I was throwing my hand up in despair, and happened to catch my hollow bottle along the way. Pray forgive my mistake. What is the meaning of this counsel? Allow me to pose my learned friend a question. What exactly did you establish with the most recent cross-examination? That Mr. William Shakespeare is a liar and a thief. In other words, that his testimony is unreliable. That's exactly it. Very well, let us assume the man is a liar. Now allow me to pose another question. What possible difference does that make? Well, that was the most damning evidence against the defendant gone, because we had no other... the other witness. We know that the self-deletion can be discounted, and the Yard's investigation revealed no other sign of another vessel that contained poison. And on the night in question, there were no visitors to the room except the accused. And the young gasman's testimony, which we have no reason to doubt, has confirmed that. Furthermore, the only possible way poison could have entered the victim's body is the tea. Or to see no evidence whatsoever to suggest otherwise. Even if William Shakespeare is the liar you claim him to be, these facts have been objectively established. There's no escaping it. Therefore, in light of these facts, the prosecution calls for immediate adjudication. Damn it. What? Order! Well, counsel, how does the defense respond? Mr. Naruhodo! What was the point of last cross-examination? Did it actually get us anywhere? Or did it make no difference at all, like Lord Van Zyke's saying? I'm gonna raise an objection. No, this isn't over. The defense will not rest. What? But, counsel, you successfully explained everything. You've identified and substantiated the unscrupulous method employed by Mr. Shakespeare to consume gas. What more is there to discuss? Lord Van Zyke just highlighted 3 facts in order to make his point, contrary to what he had the court believe. Not all of them have been objectively established at all. What are you trying to say, my Japanese friend? At least one of those so-called facts is an assumption due to lack of evidence. But the situation has changed now, following the cross-examination of the latest witnesses to take the stand. Don't be absurd. What is this nonsense? Yes, when you bring everything we've learned so far together and consider as a whole, it's clear. There's a question we now need to reconsider, namely... Was someone else responsible? What if somebody else entirely who poisoned the victim? If that's your assertion, by all means, tell us who it was. Well, who was this mysterious third party, counsel? I think it's a little too soon to be naming names, my lord. On the contrary, it's a little too late, much like your defense. Messed up. But we've shown so much. The situation's changed, I'm sure of it. Mr. Shakespeare is trying to make more ice coins the night in question. I really feel like that's a clue here. It's pointing towards something else. Was the poison in the tea? We've all been led to believe the poison that afflicted Mr. Shakespeare was in the tea brought to him by Mr. Natsume, but that's conjecture at best.
Objection!
The victim has testified that nothing else passed his lips that night. There's no other possibility. And since there was no trace of the tea left the scene, it couldn't be tested for traces of the poison.
Objection!
Ah, but as I said, the situation has changed, because in fact, some of Mr. Natsume's tea was left at the scene, in particular a piece of evidence that proves it. A ludicrous claim. Scotland Yard detectives investigate the scene exhaustively. What evidence are you suggesting they missed? The defense has made a bold claim indeed. Well, counsel, present your proof. What evidence from the scene of the crime can tell us about the nature of the defendant's tea? Some of it was from the bar of soap. Good gracious. Soap again? The same bar the victim used to fashion his coins of ice. Yes, that's right, my lord. It just came back to me. Something about when we first found this bar of soap at the scene yesterday. It's more bars of soap. Soap? What are bars of soap doing lined up on the ledge outside the window? I'm quite certain that when we originally stumbled upon the bars of soap, there was actually a frozen coin in each bar. So you discovered the gas thieves' coin factory. Fascinating. In a way, yes, but there's more. The coins we found in the soap at the time weren't normal ice. There was something strange about them, you see? Exactly, something very obviously strange. They were red. The ice was red? No, you mean to say... That's right, it's obvious to me now. The fake coins in the soap were made from frozen tea. What? I would remind the court of a statement made by Mr. Natsume early in this trial. Yes, I did take some freshly brewed tea with me when I visited Mr. Shakespeare's room as a gift. The public water pump outside always freezes at night, so I brought bottled water specially to make it. This is the result. Never will I touch tea again, never. Ah, yes, I believe there had been a snowfall that day. It's particularly cold. Sadly, on such occasions, the poorly constructed water mains in the East End are prone to freezing. So on the night in question, Mr. Shakespeare, having no running water to use, was forced to use the tea brought by Mr. Natsume in order to make his fake coins. Oh my word. There were 2 bars of soap on the window's edge when my judicial assistant and I investigated the scene. That's right, and we only borrowed one of them. Which means that even as we speak, some of the defendant's tea is still present at the scene of the crime. Frozen solid in a bar of soap outside Mr. Shakespeare's window. Extraordinary. Earlier today, Inspector Gregson informed the court that even if 1 drop of tea remained, the Scotland Yard could analyze it for poison. As such, we're now in the position to prove or disprove that, until now, has been mere conjecture. By finding out for sure whether or not Mr. Natsume's tea actually contained the poison at all. Ah, you smug. My lord, we cannot do the defendant the injustice of passing judgment now. The police should be dispatched to recover the remaining bar of soap from the scene at once. The defense requests a thorough analysis of the frozen tea and brought within it, to determine whether or not it contains poison. Bailiff, instruct the police to attend the scene at once. Yes, my lord, understood. It would seem we have no choice but to suspend these proceedings for the time being. I trust you have no objection, Lord Van Zykes. None, my lord. Scotland Yard will recover the tea from the scene and carry out the requisite tests immediately. The trial will resume the same hour tomorrow. The prosecution and defense may conduct further investigations as appropriate in the interim. Yes, my lord. Oh, yeah, wow. Yeah, I realized, but in the last game, there was no multi-day cases. Interesting. Then again, they try to cut down on multi-day cases in some of the later ones I remember, because I remember in like in the original trilogy, the first game and the second game had some trials that lasted 3 days, and I think it was generally agreed that tripping over my own words here, it was generally thought that they lasted a bit too long, so I'm guessing they decided to shorten them where possible. Still, I haven't run into any cases here that felt a bit too drawn out. So, probably for the best. Alright, well, we managed to scrape through here somehow. Thank you, counsels. Court is adjourned till tomorrow. And I think now would be a very good time to save and continue next time. Sounds good. Save progress? Sounds good to me. Trial. Alright. 3 hours. A bit longer than usual, especially given I started a bit late, but I think it ended up rather well, don't you? Alright, well, thank you for watching. Hope you had a good time. I save my VODs for as long as Twitch allows, if you ever need them. They can be there, or if you want to see some of my older VODs, I've been uploading my YouTube channel. You can find the link in my About page. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.